Hey guys, tonight we're not sailing with pirates, no rum-soaked decks, no treasure chests, no questionable sailors yelling at seagulls because they look suspicious. Instead, we're riding into a completely different kind of chaos. A world that traded saltwater misery for dust, heat, blisters, and cows that absolutely did not care about your personal comfort. Tonight, we're drifting into the real cowboy cattle trail. Not the Hollywood version, not the slow-motion sunset version, and definitely not the singing around a campfire with perfectly styled hair version. I mean the actual trail where your bed was the hard ground, your perfume was horse sweat, your alarm clock was a cow stepping on something important, and vacation meant you got 10 minutes to scrape mud off your boots. But before we ride out, go ahead and like the video and subscribe only if this kind of quiet, slightly weird historical bedtime storytelling helps you relax. If not, that's fine. Even real cowboys weren't universally popular, especially the ones who snored loud enough to scare coyotes. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and if you're here, chances are you're trying to fall asleep to the comforting realization that at least you don't have to spend 14 hours tomorrow chasing 2,000 stubborn longhorn cattle across prickly brush and rattlesnake real estate. Now dim those lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise, get comfortable, and maybe tuck your feet under a blanket, not because of rats this time, but because an imaginary cactus might decide to wander through your dreams. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what cowboy life actually felt like? Not the glamorized kind, the real stuff, the blisters, the dust in your teeth, the aching back that starts complaining before you're even awake, the endless walking and riding that makes modern gym workouts look like warm-ups for toddlers. What did it feel like to wake up at 3 a.m. because the herd was spooked by thunder, to live for weeks on beans, biscuits, and hopes you wouldn't get kicked by your horse? To be 14, 15, 16 years old and suddenly responsible for guiding a river of angry beef across hundreds of miles of wilderness? And how did these exhausted, sunburnt teenagers manage to survive stampedes, storms, loneliness, boredom, danger, and bad coffee with nothing but grit, stubbornness, and a hat that blew off at the worst possible times? Tonight, we're going to drift gently into that world, not to romanticize it, not to dramatize it, but to feel it softly the way dust settles at dusk, the way a campfire crackles when the wind is kind, the way the world quiets when the herd finally sleeps. So take a slow breath in, let the noise of your day fall away, and imagine the wide open plains, the endless sky, and a young cowboy starting a journey he's not ready for but making it anyway. Settle in, close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the story begin. Chapter 1. An unromantic welcome to cowboy life. Hey guys, welcome back to your brief escape from adulthood, where our narcoleptic journey into history tonight is about as romantic as a broom closet in July. Prepare to immerse yourself in the less than glamorous life of cowboy cattle drivers, the real men of the Wild West, who, let's be honest, were less John Wayne and more John, can I borrow $1 for some beans? Before we saddle up for this unlikely rodeo, why not take a moment to dim the lights and crank that fan to a whispering breeze? You'll want to nestle into your bed like a burrito, or maybe even an overstuffed saddlebag. And while you're tucked away, let's ponder some riveting questions that make us appreciate our own cushy lives. Like, have you ever tried to sleep while being constantly poked by splinters from the bag you've chosen as your mattress? Or how about, does your cat snore louder than a team of oxen? These are the real conundrums of history, my friends. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1870, specifically in a dim, lopsided barn on the dusty cattle trail, surrounded by an orchestra of snores from your fellow cowboys and a horse who sounds like it just watched a particularly upsetting western. Lucky you. Your back aches, your thigh feels like a porcupine audition gone wrong, and the aroma of hay mixed with who knows what is your new morning cologne. You're not just in the Old West, you're in the "why did I sign up for this" edition of cowboy life. But let's talk about the barn a little more, shall we? This rustic building, with no straight walls in sight, Looks like it was assembled during a particularly hasty game of Jenga. As you blink the sleep from your eyes, the light filters awkwardly through the gaps, revealing nails that may or may not be relics from the last century's barn-raising catastrophe. The wooden boards creak under the weight of poorly preserved secrets and a few too many regrettable decisions. In this cozy abode, your choice of sleeping arrangement is, let's say, unique. Instead of a plush mattress, you've chosen a saddlebag, because nothing says relaxation like sleeping on a strap meant for holding leather and not, your exhausted body. It's a choice echoing the great philosophical question: how did humans become so far removed from memory foam? The floor is paved with more splinters than the average tree when it meets a lumberjack. And hey, if you're lucky, you might just get a side order of hay underfoot, nothing like the rustic feeling of straw in your toes to remind you of the finer things in life. Every now and then, as you struggle to find a comfortable position, you can hear the disputes outside. Is that a horse whining, or just the universe, sharing its collective sorrow over the human condition? Maybe both. The distant figures of the other cowboys cast shadows like something from a western flick, only this isn't a film set. This is real life, and you're just trying to survive. Listen to a chorus of snoring that could rival an old tractor, while your only friend keeps sidling up to you and making weird sounds. Yes, that's your horse, ready for a spectacular morning adventure involving a lot of walking, shouting, and possibly getting kicked in the shin just the way you plan to start your day. But wait, let's not underestimate the culinary delight that's waiting for you: breakfast. Although, delight is perhaps a generous term. You've got a delightful brew of coffee that tastes more like burnt shoe leather than an invigorating beverage. What's a cowboy without his coffee? Probably a happier cowboy, is the consensus. Pair that with a traditional cowboy breakfast that can best be described as beans and stale bread. That's right, nothing says fuel for the cattle drive like day-old cuts of stale carbohydrates and a side of regret. So, as you sit there, trying to figure out if you could light that disgustingly cold bean casserole on fire, not for warmth, mind you, but just to create a culinary miracle, you wonder, how did our ancestors ever survive without the miracle of gluten-free options and soy milk? The word cowboy didn't conjure up images of kale shakes or matcha lattes back in the day. No, it meant embracing the kind of questionable decisions that later generations could only look back on in horror or laughter. Ah, the beauty of the cowboy life. It's a tapestry woven from every awkward moment, every poorly timed joke, and every chipper horse, trying to remind you that you've just been blessed with a life of outdoor plumbing, and by plumbing, I mean you'd better hope the bushes are sufficiently dense. It's a frontier full of ruggedness, and make no mistake, it's going to be a bumpy ride. So here you are, unshowered, undercaffeinated, and surrounded by more splinters than friends. Welcome to the open range, where every sunrise is a new adventure filled with uncomfortable truths, shouting, and the sound of leather creaking like an old blockbuster villain's laugh. Lasso yourself a nap, you're going to need it. And remember, history may not be kind, but at least it's always mildly interesting, and nothing is more interesting than knowing you could have been eating a soggy slice of cold hardtack instead of the tacos you're sticking your washy fingers into right now. Chapter 2: The Cattle Trail Showdown. Hey guys, welcome back to your nightly history adventure, where we dive into the unraveling chaos of cowboy life, not that glamorous Hollywood flick, but the real deal. Akin to a 2-hour reality show, where everyone looks a bit disheveled and smells like regret. So grab your cowboy hat, if you have one, or just a pillow, either will do, and prepare for a ride through the grit, glory, and glorious awkwardness of life on the cowboy cattle trail. Tonight, we join a grizzled trail boss, whose mustache could probably house a family of raccoons, and whose eyes look like 2 dry creek beds under the relentless hot sun. Picture it. Sweat drips down like errant raindrops on a hot July afternoon. And there you are, poised to behold the spectacle that is a greenhorn cowboy wrestling with a saddle, trying to fit it on a lean, ugly gelding with one ear tilted suspiciously to the right, affectionately dubbed Lefty. If Lefty had feelings, he'd probably be considering a career change at this very moment. Now, let's take a closer look at this awkward scene unfolding under the vast sky, where the sun is mercilessly frying everything in its path. including any remaining traces of dignity for our greenhorn. He fumbles with the saddle, his fingers clumsy like a chicken trying to navigate a grain maze. Is this cowboying or slapstick comedy? It's hard to tell at this point. The trail boss watches with a bemused expression, unable to decide whether to intervene or just enjoy the show. As you stand in the background, sipping on something laced with enough dust to make you wonder if you'd accidentally bitten into a piece of gravel, you can't help but notice that everyone involved is part of a strange ritual, a laughter-packed ballet of uncoordinated cowboy boot moves. This would be viral content today, for sure. The whole scene could use a little commentary. Look at this greenhorn, attempting to tame a beast for the first time. It's like watching a toddler with a hammer. Now, imagine the sounds around you. The cactus-spined wind whips through the parched landscape, kicking up tiny gusts of sand that cleverly blend with the sweat on your brow. It creates a delightful sensation, reminiscent of being trapped in a giant, arid snow globe. If you're not careful, you might just sneeze. Get ready for a rodeo of dusty, sideways snorts. Is a cowboy sneeze akin to firing a cannon? We may never know, but somewhere an owl probably winced. As the greenhorn struggles to get Lefty saddled, he mutters some creative curses that would make a sailor blush. It's fascinating how cursing was always a fine art, allowing you to express the exact level of frustration. What is the modern equivalent, you ask? Probably a text to your friend filled with hashtags and frustrated emojis. Let's pause for a moment and consider the fashion statements of our intrepid ranchers. When you think of cowboys, you might imagine rugged, leather boots and chic hats. Picture this. Our greenhorn is donning a hat that's about 1 inch away from being a pancake and trousers so worn they may have been borrowed from a scarecrow. You might want to ask yourself, how does one make hay look like a fashion statement? Their style can only be compared to wearing a potato sack as a high-fashion ensemble emphasis on functionality with a daredevil flair. But here's where it gets particularly amusing. While you might think the most damning characteristic of a cowboy's work is the never-ending dust and sweat, it's actually their diet. Ah, the joys of culinary concoctions on the trail. You see, once you've managed to saddle this questionable horse and head out into the wild blue yonder, or just blue, if you squint, the meal options quickly dwindle to beans and, you guessed it, more beans. It's like living in a college dorm, but with more horses and less Wi-Fi. Just imagine, instead of veggie chips on the couch, you've got cow poop underfoot. And what's cooking translates to, remember that can of beans we opened last week? There's still some left. As you sit transfixed by this veritable circus of human antics, you suddenly realize that a lot of cowboy life revolves around patience, persistence, and copious amounts of humor. Yes, surviving the cattle drive means embracing the chaos like a hard-shelled taco holding together at the wrong angle. You can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. After all, when you're deep in the dusty wilds of the Old West, finding joy in a comically oversized hat on a horse who seems to have a personal vendetta against its saddle is just par for the course. And if you happen to survive this robust display of human awkwardness, congratulations. You're ready to tackle any problem modern life can throw your way. Lost your keys? Perfect. Try getting Lefty to agree to this ridiculous saddle again. So embrace the laughter, my friends, because even on the most rugged trails, life has a way of catching you off guard. You might just find that amidst the horses, the scorching sun, and the beans that seem to multiply as steadily as your worries, there lies a world where laughter can be louder than the hooves of crazed cattle, and more nourishing than breakfast slop. Now, lean back, take a deep breath, and let the hilarity flow through you like that warm afternoon breeze, while you drift into a sleep filled with dreams of cowhands and comical misadventures. Because if you can laugh at history, my friends, it becomes a lot less daunting and a lot more mildly interesting. Sleep tight. Chapter 3. The Boy Who Signed Away His Childhood. And now, as your breath softens and the modern world drifts somewhere far behind you, let's step quietly into a dusty, slow-moving western town, the kind where the sun never seems to blink and every wooden porch creaks like it's arguing with gravity. Picture this. A lone 17-year-old boy stands in the middle of the street. Not a man yet, not really a child anymore. Just that fragile, awkward in-between that life refuses to make comfortable. His boots are far too big for him, hand-me-downs from someone who probably lied and said they fit just fine. The leather is cracked, the soles uneven, and you can practically hear his ankles asking the universe what they did wrong. Dust curls around him in lazy spirals, lifting off the ground with the slow confidence of a desert that knows nobody here is in a hurry to do anything remotely sensible. The boy holds a tiny, crumpled tobacco label in one hand and a stub of charcoal in the other. His fingers shake not from fear exactly, but from the heavy weight of a decision he barely understands, but already knows he can't take back. A cattle trail contract. Written small, thin, and barely official, as if the paper itself is embarrassed to be offering him a job that promises blisters, thirst, loneliness, hunger, and the privilege of smelling like cattle for several months straight. He bends over the label, the sun burning the back of his neck, the charcoal smudging between his fingers, and he signs his name, a name that still trembles at the edges, like it's trying to figure out the shape of the adult it will belong to someday. Around him, the town barely notices. A blacksmith hammers lazily at a horseshoe that probably won't fit anything. A dog sleeps beneath a wagon wheel, dreaming heroic dreams that its actual life never quite matches. A dry breeze pushes through the saloon doors, sending the faint smell of whiskey, sweat, and disappointment out onto the street. And yet, for the boy, this moment is enormous, a tiny hinge in time that will swing open a life he can't imagine yet. The cattle trail. Weeks, sometimes months, of riding from sunrise to past sunset. Little food, barely any sleep, a saddle that treats your spine like an optional suggestion. Storms that come out of nowhere. Stampedes that don't care how old you are, and stretches of land so empty you start talking to your horse just to prove you still exist. He knows all this. Everyone does. But knowing isn't the same as standing here, boots sinking into dust, as a ranch foreman with a face like sun-baked leather glances over the signature and grunts approval. In this world, childhood isn't something you grow out of. It's something the world shrugs off you like an old coat. The boy straightens. His shoulders instinctively square, not because he's ready, but because pretending is the only strategy he's got. Somewhere down the street, a cow bellows. Somewhere beyond the horizon, thousands more wait. And somewhere deep inside him, a quiet, stubborn voice whispers, "Keep going." He hands the label back. The foreman nods to the horse, waiting for him, a stubborn gelding, with one good eye, and an attitude that suggests it has already judged him and found him lacking. But still, it's a beginning. A step forward, a road opening, a life unraveling, mile by mile, beneath an enormous sky that does not care how old you are, as long as you keep moving. So tonight, as you drift deeper into this dusty, sun-bleached moment, remember him, the boy with oversized boots, charcoal-stained fingers, and a future written in dust. He didn't know what waited for him, but he signed anyway. Because sometimes, the hardest journeys begin with a shaky signature and a pair of boots that don't quite fit. Chapter 4. The Unromanticized Boss. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, prepare to unearth the slightly damp, occasionally smelly secrets of the American cowboy, specifically the ones you'd rather not see in cinematic glory. Forget Hollywood's six-pack abs and shiny lawns. This is more like a snooze fest equipped with sun-dried beans and awkward encounters with disgruntled cattle. Before we dive into tonight's saga, let's take a moment to welcome you to a time even less polished than your favorite thrift store find. Have you ever wondered what life would be like if your greatest achievement was taming an ordinary horse named Lefty while choking on dust? Or what if your idea of a dazzling evening involved discussing the merits of beans over, well, more beans? Beef jerky? Forget about it. So, grab your dusty old 10-gallon hat or just a cozy blanket and settle in. Remember to dim those lights, adjust the fan, and let your mind wander into the unmistakable, slightly grimy world of Trail Boss Gaines. The good news: you're about to enter a universe where the jokes are as dry as the land and just as unpredictable. Buckle up, my friends. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1870, right in the midst of the great cattle drives. The air is as crisp as burnt toast, and the sound of hooves clanging against the hardened earth is all around you. Looking around, you might note that your fellow cowboys would not win any awards for grooming, In fact, their hair seems to have made a pact with every dust particle to form a monolithic, unkempt hairstyle. Now, let's zoom in on our trail boss. Gaines a man whose face looks as if he's been left too long in a pot of black coffee. Imagine, if you will, a rugged figure with a brow so furrowed it could practically harbor a family of raccoons. Today, he's elegantly rolling a cigarette with one hand, while guiding his horse with the other. It's a marvel of multitasking that would put modern-day parents to shame. Gaines stands tall, his presence radiating a silent, non-negotiable authority. You might wonder what that kind of unflinching confidence looks like, and let me assure you, it's the same expression a cat gives when it's just knocked over your favorite lamp, self-assured and unapologetic. As you observe the scene unfold, you imagine his thoughts racing. Why would anyone think this job would be a good idea? Well, folks, the storyline behind the cattle drive spoke of adventure and riches, but the reality felt like getting into a three-legged sack race with your worst enemy. Let's talk more about Gaines. His mustache, a thick stripe of chaos above his upper lip, might very well register its own opinion on which horse deserves to be ridden today. Perhaps it's like a wise oracle, foreseeing which livestock is plotting its escape under the cover of night. In fact, with how much beans the crew has consumed lately, one could even say that Gaines's mustache had a better chance of surviving the cattle trail than the average cowboy. But while Gaines projects authority, you can't ignore the backdrop of this rugged formality. A band of greenhorns bumbling about, nervously adjusting saddles and forming an impromptu comedy troupe. It's a chaotic scene like watching kittens try to hike in oversized boots. Now, imagine the sounds surrounding you. The clatter of gear, the occasional curses blossoming in clouds of dust, and the odd but loud moo of cattle interspersed. It feels like being caught in a Western symphony, albeit one composed by a raccoon who just discovered rhythm. Ever wondered how one gets to the epic, "I can't believe my life led me here" moment? It's a messy art form. The imagery keeps evolving. You can smell the earthy richness of sweat mixed with a hint of burnt hay and cattle manure wafting through the air. It's charming if you squint a little, or if you've recently come off a particularly adventurous hiking trip and your standards have magically lowered. But amidst all this hilarity, let's not forget the culinary delights that cowhands often faced. Most meals involved what you guessed it, beans. Lots and lots of beans. It's as if an endless canning factory spent too much time in Texas and decided to share its bounty with unsuspecting cowboys. The result? A diet that could only be described as profoundly gaseous. It made communal campfires an adventure in themselves, as everyone took turns sharing their latest bean-fueled symphonies. Speaking of the irreverence of diet, align it with modern culinary challenges. Imagine trying to impress your friends with gourmet taco night, only to discover you've somehow ended up cooking a dozen different varieties of beans. Your last dinner party may have ended with whispers of, "What were they thinking? But the cowboys?" They embraced the chaos with hearty laughs, because what else could they do? But taking it all in stride, Gaines stands stoically, likely pondering the meaning of life while meticulously rolling that cigarette a feat that might as well invite an audience of casual spectators. As if performing a magic trick, he deftly folds the paper and tucks in the tobacco, completing a ritual steeped more in need than finesse. In a way, this is his coping mechanism, a way to maintain sanity in a world that thrives on absurdity. So, as you drift further into this historical yarn, remember the laughter and the woes of the cowboys, for within the dust and the beans, there's an inherent wisdom. While you may feel like you're stumbling headfirst into a raucous comedy of misadventure, you're not just surviving. The bizarre nature of life adds layers of joy like grains of salt in a recipe gone terribly, beautifully wrong. Now, unwind in this humorous quagmire, and let the stories of brave but nonsensical cowboys swirl around you like a chaotic campfire dance. Because history may not always be perfect, but if you can, laugh at the past. It becomes a gateway into much warmer dreams. Chapter 5. The Dance of Dust and Cattle. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're going to step into a world hotter than your Aunt Mabel's jalapeno cornbread at the county fair. Imagine you've taken a wrong turn in your SUV and ended up in the middle of 1,870 Texas, surrounded by the great cattle drives. And by surrounded, I mean literally swarmed by thousands of steers, each mooing incessantly as they nudge you with their not-so-friendly horns. all while you're desperately trying to find a drink of water that doesn't taste like a mix of sweat and dust. Before we dive deeper, take a second to remember how you feel lounging in your air-conditioned comfort, sipping a cold beverage. Now picture yourself under a sun baking your face like a potato in an oven one that forgot to switch off. What were they thinking, these cowboys? Did they have a fantastical vision of frontier life like a Tinder date gone wrong? Why are you suddenly sweating like a popsicle under a torch? And what kind of person thinks, sure, I'll spend months at a time herding cattle without a decent shower? So dim those lights, crank up your fan, and try to find your seat cushion if you're lucky enough to have one, and prepare yourself for an adventure that is way more complicated than just getting from point A to point B. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the middle of a cattle trail in the good old American West. The sight is striking, if one could overlook the pungent aroma of bovine behind you. Imagine long lines of cowboys, their hats tipped down to shield them from the relentless sun, stretching as far as your weary eyes can see. You're surrounded by cattle that look like they just came out of an existential crisis, bellowing into the void while questioning whether that tuft of grass is truly worth the effort. As you take in the view, you realize the air is shimmering with heat, almost as if it's teasing you with the prospect of an ice-cold lemonade that's just out of reach. You can feel the dust clinging to every inch of skin like an overzealous hug. But fear not, this dust is a badge of honor. It says, I've made bad life choices, and I'm proud. Now, let's take a moment to spotlight our main character, a weathered cowboy named Jeb, a name so classic it might as well be topping the charts in a late-night country ballad. Jeb is keenly sipping from a battered canteen that probably hasn't seen water in weeks. His face is caked in trail dust, making him appear like a walking statue of bad decisions and regrettable hairstyles. And oh, let's chat about hydration for a moment. You ever tried coaxing a capybara to drink? That's pretty much what Jeb must feel like trying to get any moisture out of his canteen. Each sip he takes is pursued with a panicked fervor, like he's trying to squeeze the last drops of popularity out of a budding influencer. What does Jeb desire most in this sweltering world? Most likely a nice shade tree, maybe a pool, or heck, even a refrigerator filled with soda. But instead, he's content merely to catch the occasional whiff of fried beans perpetually taunting him from the chuck wagon, like a gourmet food truck no one can afford. Now, let's set the scene a little deeper. The ground beneath you is unforgiving, a vast expanse of cracked earth that makes you wonder if you've actually stumbled onto a giant tortilla. Imagine each step sending plumes of dust skyward like a dandelion caught in a windstorm. If you've ever wondered why there's a trend for dusty cocktails, well, take a moment to think about your new favorite drink, Texas Trail Dust Surprise. Spoiler, it pairs terribly with regret. You might think that cowboys of the trail led lives bursting with excitement, filled with wild chases and daring showdowns. Ah, but let me burst that bubble for you. The reality was deeply resplendent in its monotony. Most of their conversations revolved around, you guessed it, unexpected flatulence post-bean consumption. Always bring some beans along, they'd say. It's a surefire way to clear the camp faster than a bear at a picnic. Adding to the absurdity, you can hear the clattering of hooves, mixed with the occasional moo, that echoes like misplaced karaoke. Sometimes, you can't help but think that, if cattle had their own stand-up routine, it'd go something like this. Sure, we're just here to provide the beef, but let me tell you about the one time Mr. Johnson gave me the stink eye while I savored some grass near his tent. Never been more intimidated by a human. As you lay there thinking of this comically motley crew, you can practically hear Jeb's exhaustion emanating like that unwanted advice from your overly enthusiastic uncle at family gatherings. And let's not neglect the culinary delights that await you over a campfire. What's cooking? A lovely pot of, can you guess it? More beans. An endless variety of beans, all of them just waiting for someone to turn them into an encore performance. You know you've hit rock bottom when sitting in front of a campfire filled with the aromatic layer of burnt beans feels like an elite Saturday night Parisian restaurant experience. Picture this. Nightly, the cowboys gather round, trading tales as old as time. Billy once ate the spiciest beans known to man, and lived to tell the tale, but mostly to regret the seating arrangement during the night watch. It's an afternoon delight that could fill volumes, or at least the next round of campfire songs, but only if you can survive the aftermath. So, while Jeb reflects on the folly of chasing after runaway cattle while surviving a diet of legumes, let yourself drift into this dusty, raucous revelry. Because, dear friends, while our cowboy heroes may have faced the blistering sun, the cacophony of mooing, and the ever-present scent of beans, they embraced every bit of absurdity that life threw their way, a cosmic reassurance that while survival may be hard, laughter is as essential as a good pair of boots in the dust. Now, finding comfort in the comical confusion and embracing the beauty of what it means to be a cowboy, you can finally let the laughter lull you into a slumber as rich as that dirt under Jeb's feet. There's a lesson here somewhere about the value of a good joke, and it just might be the most valuable thing on the cattle trail. Chapter 6: Beans, Bafflement, and the Breathtaking Life of Jeb. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're diving deeper into the world of cowboys, where the sun blazes hotter than your uncle's stories at a family reunion, and where meals generally involve track and field events just to chew them. Picture this. You're sitting at a rustic campfire, the kind that believes every meal is an experiment in endurance. Your eyes are on a plate filled with beans so undercooked, they seem more like a science project from middle school than dinner. Today's special? A biscuit so tough it could serve double duty as a tire for a wagon. Welcome to cowboy cuisine. Set your expectations low and your appetite lower. Now, if you're a bit confused over why anyone would sign up for a life that revolves around surviving awkward dinners and epic wind gusts, you're not alone. Did these cowboys not get the memo that there are, in fact, other professions? You know, like librarian or professional napper? And as you ponder your decision to tune in, maybe consider liking, subscribing, and commenting, but only if you truly enjoy this unromanticized journey into dusty discomfort. So dim the lights, crank up that fan if you've got one, and settle in. Some questions to ponder as we embark on this silky journey through time. Have you ever tried to eat something without the convenience of a functioning palate? What about using a cast iron skillet as a makeshift shield from road cattle? And how would you feel if you woke up one morning and the only thing to greet you was the smell of burnt beans and a biscuit that might as well be a rock? Congratulations. You've just woken up on the cattle trail in 1870 and are now living the riveting life of Jeb, the cowboy, the archetype of ruggedness, resilience, and, let's face it, dietary regret. Picture him, seated near a crackling campfire, bitterly grimacing as he tries to chew on a biscuit that truly believes it could win the Olympic gold in petrified bread. It seems innocent enough, it's just a biscuit, but this one might actually bite back. Now, as you gaze at the flickering flames, imagine the air thick with the aroma of burnt beans, a scent reminiscent of charcoal and disappointment making sweet, sweet love. Off to the side, there's Cookie the cook cranking out meals helmed by sheer determination and maybe a sprinkle of bad attitude. Cookie glares at Jeb with the ferocity of a barn cat whose favorite perch has been usurped. You can practically see the heat haze between them, simmering like the beans in the pot. Let's set the mood a little. The campfire crackles, and the shadows dance more dramatically than your cousin at a wedding after too many shots of whiskey. As you look around, notice the actual setting. A broken landscape, the ground itself could very well be auditioning for a role in a thriller called Cracked Earth. The invisible crack epidemic. Each footfall sends up clouds of dust, just what you need when you're already halfway to an existential crisis with no milk for your coffee. You may think life as a cowboy is full of high-flying adventures, with daring escapades involving outlaws and cattle rustling. But let me take a moment to quench that urge for a thrilling narrative. The truth. Most cowboys spent their evenings around campfires like this, swapping real stories about how their digestive tracts were rebelling against their bean-centric diet. It's like living in the Marvel universe, but the only superpower is withstanding a mild case of stomach distress. And oh, let's not forget the ambience. Would you believe that the old-time ballads sung around a fire are often just elaborate ways to bemoan missed chances at fresh food? They weren't crooning about love lost, but rather contemplating whether to take a leap into scrambled eggs instead of beans at breakfast tomorrow. This year's hit song? The Bean Medley, featuring a chorus of grievous gas. Amid this chaos, hear the lively sound of hooves thumping against hardened dirt, Picture Jeb's trusty steed, who might actually be an overqualified lawnmower, dragging behind a tail that could catch a bird or two on a slow day. Jeb squints into the dusky horizon, secretly pondering, is it possible to survive on hope and beans alone? Asking for a friend. Now, let's get back to the food momentarily. Beans, magical fruit, well, maybe less magical in this particular context. As cookie-clattered pots and pans with a gusto that could rival an opera singer hitting high notes, you might wonder, has anyone ever attempted to slap a fresh label on these culinary creations? Texan surprise. You could almost hear the voiceover now. The beans were splendidly burned to a crisp. And what about that biscuit? You ever tried using it as an improvised hammer? Practical cowboys don't let anything go to waste. And while Jeb's mind wandered to whether this could double as construction material, all he could manage was a begrudging chew, followed by a look that said, I must be dreaming. In this moment, you can let out a chuckle, picturing Jeb's life as a blend of comedy and tragedy in the form of nutrition, with comedy knocking at the door every time he opens his mouth to speak. Eating a meal here isn't exactly a culinary adventure. It's more akin to an endurance test, the result of a competition to see who can withstand the toughest spaces. As you prepare to drift into dreams where biscuits are soft and beans are gourmet, remember that the life of a cowboy was often filled with absurdity, laughter, and any number of ways to tackle a lesser-known enemy. Absolutely horrid food. So let Jeb's grimaces fade into your slumber tonight, and may your dreams be as sweet as the thought of a perfect biscuit. Because as humorous as this cowboy life was, and as unappetizing times as those beans may have tasted, nothing beats the bonding and laughter forged over meals that made survival a little easier, even if only through sheer absurdity. Chapter 7. Sleeping under stars and speculating on cattle-related life choices. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're taking a leisurely stroll under the vast, star-filled expanse of the American West in 1870, where the prairie winds whistle. A tune that sounds suspiciously like, you really should have thought this through. Imagine lying beneath the sky, your blanket as thin as a one-ply toilet paper, pondering if this was all part of someone's elaborate prank on you. Were you really born to be a cowboy, or was there some cosmic mix-up, like you accidentally signed up for a 3-month boot camp with particularly bad culinary outcomes in the middle of nowhere? But hey, when it's either this or picking beans at a slow-growing farm, maybe it's not all that bad. Before we dive into the misadventures of our cowboy friend, let's take a moment to appreciate how you're about to embark on an adventure thicker than the dust you'll be eating for dinner. But only if you actually enjoy it. So, get cozy, dim those lights, and perhaps find that old fan lurking in the corner, because trust me, even the sound of buzzing is better than the alternative of a disgruntled cow contemplating its life choices nearby. Now, while you settle in, allow me to pose some questions that might bubble up in your mind like beans on a questionable stove. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to wake up with the gentle sounds of distant coyotes yapping like your mother's friends at a quilting bee? How do you think it feels when the sun hits your face, making you question your very existence like it's auditioning for a soap opera? And how would you explain that last meal of burnt beans and that solid biscuit to your therapist when you finally get back to civilization? Spoilers, there's no healing in a crummy cookie. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1870, lying flat on the rough prairie floor, with only the stars as your nightlight and a ton of existential despair as your guide. Here you are, heroic warrior of the West, ready to tackle the world of cattle trails, where dinner is a relative term and meals are declarations of your courage. The first thing to hit you in the morning besides the realization that you're not in your own bed is the chill in the air. Imagine waking up with the cold gently wrapping itself around you like an overly aggressive shawl knitted by your grandmother. It's adorable until you realize it is essentially the universe's way of laughing at your commitment to cowpoke life. As you shiver, perhaps a bit more than you'd like to admit, you slowly roll over using your boots as makeshift pillows. After all, what prepares you better for the day's adventures than the smell of sweat and leather? Ladies and gentlemen, achieve your dreams by investing in pillow merchandise. Now you're undoubtedly thinking of the stories that could unfold under the vibrant stars. Welcome to the life of Jeb, starry-eyed dreamer, with ambitions roughly equivalent to a ham sandwich. and a blanket that was probably designed for a particularly skinny chihuahua. Jeb, like hundreds of cowboys, was living through the age of the great cattle drives, moving herds of cows from point A to point B with the grace of a slightly confused butterball turkey. He is wrapped like a burrito in a thin, inadequate blanket that makes his legs feel like they're undergoing an intense yoga stretch every single night. Deep breaths, Jeb. Work through the stretch. Now, let's set the mood a tad. As dawn breaks, you hear the crackle of flames from last night's campfire, mingling with the very real, compelling smells of burnt beans wafting through the air. The prairie is painted in hues of beige and brown like a celestial artist suffered from color blindness. And let's not even get started on the dinner last night. If you thought dining with your in-laws was tough, try chewing on a biscuit so hard it could double as an improvised doorstop. Delicious? Not quite. Then there are the wild sounds of the prairie, coyotes yapping, as if discussing last night's food choices. Hey, did you taste that guy's scanty dinner? Talk about indigestion. I'll be dreaming of those burnt beans till my last howl. The prairie might seem peaceful, but deep down, it's a raucous festival of absurdity where every evening could mean spectacular tales or a possible bout with dysentery from the enthusiastic cooking. As Jeb rolls over, he half expects to find fellow cowboys recounting tragic tales involving unresolved beef over last night's meals, or arguing passionately over who could have made the better campfire, chili out of desperation and a desire for flavor. And here's where we find the heart of cowboy life. Camaraderie formed not just through shared experiences of lassoing cattle, but also through bonding over meals that some would argue are better suited for compost piles. Enter Cookie, the cook whose attempts at breakfast put Gordon Ramsay to shame, except in that very times, peculiar way that leaves you questioning your culinary fate. You can almost sense his disdainful glare over a cauldron of suspiciously bubbling beans. What do you want, Jeb? Another 5-star review? That's not what we're running here. With breakfast largely consisting of the sorts of beans that double as a natural laxative, Jeb often found himself pondering his life choices. Am I here for the love of the open road, or just to test the theories of vengeance through extreme gas? Because if it's the latter, I may need to invest in a gas mask. Honestly, folks, cowboy life was a culinary roller coaster where expectations plummeted faster than a rattlesnake from a cliff, while thoughts of food morphed into existential musings about the universe's intentions. The reality is Jeb's adventures often revolved around one idea: camaraderie spiced up with laughter. Surviving not only meant battling the elements, but also gathering around a flickering fire, belting out songs about the injustice of undercooked beans, and swapping stories that were often more inspirational than any self-help book can offer. So, as you snuggle deeper into your blankets tonight, drifting off amid the misadventures of our cowboy friends, remember, it's alive with laughter, absurdity, and a side of unending resilience. May your dreams be less chaotic than those of Jeb, where meals are as soft as the clouds above, and where the only cow he needs to account for is the dream cow, munching on the best grass in the wild prairie-scape of the imagination. Good night. ***. Chapter 8. Cowpoke Cabaret. Life on the trail with the wily cowboys. ***. Hey guys. Welcome back. Tonight, we're diving deeper than the depraved depths of a soggy biscuit into the heart of cowboy life in 1870. Picture it. The great cattle drives stretching across the American plains like a vast, unflattering carpet with a few too many stains. It's a time when working for peanuts was taken quite literally, and every meal is an exercise in existential questioning. Is this really what I signed up for? If you've ever felt that homely desire to belong, only to be faced with ridiculously poor quality food, you're in for a treat, or maybe we should call it a trick, like trying to ride a bull after 2 cups of bad coffee. But first, before you float away on dreams of turning into a burrito under your covers, let's take a moment to appreciate the unfiltered absurdity that 15 grumpy cowboys murmuring to a herd of bewildered cows really entails. If you think your neighbors' late-night debates about lawn care are wild, imagine a band of cowboys arguing over whose turn it is to do the cooking after a meal that's closer to a war crime than gourmet dining. Ah, the Wild West, where hangry men had to hash it out over rationed biscuits. Now, please, Please, dim those lights, put on a fan, and settle in, because things are about to get bumpy, dusty, and mildly amusing. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be the only person in a group of rugged cowboys who's seriously debating how to convince a cow to become a plant-based friendly member of the food chain? Or how you'd cope with a cook named Cookie, who's serving breakfast that could either jump out of the frying pan or wrestle you for the last biscuit? Spoiler alert, those biscuits don't back down easily, folks. Congratulations. Forget civilization, because you've just landed smack dab in the middle of the 1,870 cattle trail experience. Where the ground is rough, the air, dusty, and your companion's sleeping sounds might just convince you to reconsider your dreams of cowboy grandeur. As you stir awake on the morning after a night filled with dreams about anything but a cauldron of burnt beans, you're struck first by the realization that, yes, you're still alive, and no, you should have probably invested in a more forgiving sleeping bag, rather than the patchy old blanket that seems to have made itself at home in the prairie dust. That plastered feeling of cowhide stuck to your back begs the question, didn't I wash this before the trip? Around you, the diverse crew of weathered cowboys, each more rugged than the last, moves about the campsite like well-worn strings on a rickety guitar. Meet Dobbs, the tobacco-chomping legend of the crew with a face that has seen more west than a movie cowboy's entire career. He's smiling while chewing, which is a talent more impressive than it sounds. If you catch him mid-chew, he might just look like a grinning alligator. Then there's Jesse, the dreamer among them, whose aspirations to do anything other than this have all but been evaporated by the hot prairie sun. Imagine Jesse, young, bushy-tailed, and bewildered, sharing his grand visions while trying to keep a stray cow from making it its mission to stomp the dreams right out of him. I tell ya, it's all about riding away to find riches, fame, or at least a good cup of coffee, he insists, unraveling visions so thoroughly inspirational that you half expect him to start a yoga retreat called Namaste and grit your teeth. The only thing standing in the way of Jesse achieving true Zen? A 2,000-pound cow with a knack for thinking every sideways glance is a personal offense. Let's lean into the sensory tumult of this untamed life. The air thick with the aroma of sagebrush and maybe an unpleasant blend of campfire smoke and unidentified substances from last night's dubious dinner. If you had to assign a scent to this experience, you'd be left with a memory that scents like sweaty leather, mixed with a hint of, this definitely shouldn't be in my mouth. And just like that, it's time to break the fast. The luckless cowpokes circle around Cookie's bubbling pot like vultures eyeing a particularly unfortunate roadkill. Breakfast is served, he bellows, slopping a ladle of whatever's bubbling in the pot and expecting you to somehow view it as gourmet fare. The collective sighs create enough gust to send the nearest tumbleweed rolling into the sunset as every man grapples silently with the question, how many more of these meals before I should begin considering sacrificing my dignity for a wild hunk of lettuce? Little does Jesse know that survival out here has less to do with graces and more to do with cow tarts. No, not the magical kind waiting at home, but the chewy biscuits that could double as building materials. Think it's a stretch? Well, let's just say that the cows attending their late-night dessert dance have nothing on Cookie's cooking. Amidst the comic struggles shared among all the cowpokes, a warm sense of camaraderie forms. Even as you awkwardly chew on a biscuit that could foil an enemy advance, there's laughter and tales being spun of cow-related escapades, like the time Dobbs found himself on a wild escape from both a cow and a campfire ghost that had everyone chuckling till dawn. This is the heart of the cowboy life, ruggedness mixed with humor, endurance mixed with grumbling bellies, and laughter as the melody that binds them while they traipse across the prairie, leaving a trail of dusty, half-hearted dreams in their wake. So, remember as you tuck yourself deeper into your blankets, drifting off into dreamland, it's a wild ride filled with absurdity that may make your dreams as rich as your immediate gathering of cows. Sweet dreams, partner. May they include a much softer biscuit and a side of non-vengeful ranch animals. Chapter 9. The Cattle Trail Shuffle. A Cowboy's Unscripted Agony. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're taking a leisurely jaunt down a dusty, horse-ridden path that's less about cowboy legends and more about the grimy truth of life on the cattle trails of 1,870. Picture this. the great cattle drive stretching across the plains with the grace of a three-legged cow on roller skates. It's a time when a cattle drive sounds like a fun adventure, but in reality, it's more like a regrettable road trip with your mildly intoxicated uncle who insists on singing show tunes from the backseat while you're stuck in traffic. Do you ever wonder what it would feel like to have dirt permanently embedded in your pores, or maybe get a sense of camaraderie with a group of men who smell like old leather and questionable decisions? Just what would it be like to have your thighs ache more than your heart after a breakup? Trust me, at the end of this journey, you'll sympathize more with a lasso than with a love letter. So, dim those lights, put on a fan, and get comfy because we're about to dive face first into the not-so-glamorous life of a cowboy. Imagine the morning routine of splashing your face with anything that resembles water, only to discover it's really just a rain puddle next to a cow's rear end, mystery taste included. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1870, somewhere that can only be described as the Great American Dust Bowl, where they've taken roughing it and elevated it to an art form. Here, the sun is a cruel overlord, the wind is a constant dramatic sigh, and your body is screaming for mercy from weeks of saddle soreness that makes a gym workout seem like a pleasant day at the spa. Let's set the scene. You've got weeks of trail dust caked onto your skin, making you look less like a rugged cowboy and more like a misguided piece of art from a second-rate gallery. Your body has become a canvas of aches and grit, and, in a moment that can only be labeled character building, you've even grown oddly fond of the moist smell of horse sweat mixed with, let's be honest, your own unique odor. As you ride, every jolt of the saddle stirs up a delightful cocktail of pain in your thighs. If you thought leg day at the gym was tough, wait till you try the cattle drive squat. It's way less glamorous and involves grimacing at every rise and fall. Do you remember when you thought a day of hiking would yield picturesque mountain views? Well, here, surprise. All you see is an endless ocean of cattle butts and the occasional tumbleweed rolling by like it's having a better time than you are. Let's talk about meals, or more accurately, the lack thereof. You might expect hearty dinners by a campfire, but in reality, it's closer to a game of guess that gristle. Every meal is made with the finest ingredients they could find in a state of desperation: beef jerky, beans that require a dentist appointment just to chew, and a soup that might actually be plotting against you from within its bubbling cauldron. The morale of the group is fueled by a bizarre mix of rhythmically humming your pain away and sporadic hopes for a snack that doesn't resemble last week's boot polish. And there's a deep camaraderie built around sharing food that very well could threaten your invisible fragile spirit, bound together by the only sounds that escape the Wild West. The crunch of dried biscuits so hard they could double as building materials. Remember how you thought that your co-workers' lunch break debates were the worst? Just wait until you get caught in a heated discussion about whose turn it is to eat the mystery stew, while trying to ignore the adjunct drama of a cow that's just decided to topple over, literally, in protest. And let's not forget the social dynamics at play. There's that one guy in the group, let's call him Slim, who acts like he's the life coach of the cattle drive. He's the kind of man who turns every journey into an unexpected TED talk about resilience while simultaneously losing a battle with his own bootlaces. You can't help but roll your eyes as he bellows quips like, "You gotta embrace your struggle, boys," while your inner voice whispers, "Embrace this saddle sore. Thanks, but I'll pass." Out on the trail, the days blend into an exhausting haze, punctuated by your horse's stubborn decision to trot just fast enough to ensure your thighs wage a silent war on your sanity. If there's anything that makes a long ride better, it's an ongoing discussion about how the next camp will serve vegetable stew. Because nothing says trail cuisine like a soup made from what appears to be, dare I say, desolate weeds, masquerading as culinary delights. But amidst that relentless grind, the humor of it all, the absurdity, is enough to bring light to your bruised thighs. As you drift off to sleep, in your makeshift camp of smelly blankets, surrounded by your vocal companions, who long for even a slightly more gourmet experience, you realize something truly beautiful. Surviving the cattle trail is like a long, drawn-out comedic play where you're merely an unwilling actor, constantly tripping over the punchline, and somehow, it feels less like suffering and more like, well, an oddly comforting absurdity. So, as you settle in for the night, feel free to chuckle quietly at the universally relatable struggles of men who quite literally just wanted to herd some cattle. Because while days on the trail may be long and filled with the grumbling of men and animals alike, laughter is the secret ingredient that makes all that dust a little easier to swallow. Sweet dreams, partner. May they involve biscuits that don't double as building materials. Chapter 10. The Vastness of Isolation. A Cowboy's Mini Midlife Crisis. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey more awkward than your uncle's last attempt at dancing the bittersweet reality of surviving the cowboy cattle trail in 1870. Yes, that's right. Get ready for a comedy of errors stretched over miles of dusty horizon that would make even your worst family road trip seem like a 5-star vacation. Have you ever felt that shrinking sensation when faced with the vastness of your own existential dread? You're not alone. Now, I bet you've wondered, what does it feel like to saddle up and face the open range, surrounded by endless grass and a cacophony of mooing cows that are thoroughly unimpressed with your life choices? Or perhaps you've pondered how one man could generate so much odor after several days in the saddle, and if washing really is overrated, spoiler alert, it is until it isn't. So, dim those lights, put on a fan, and settle in for some mild hilarity mixed with a generous dose of what was I thinking? Because, congratulations, you've just woken up on the great cattle drive of 1870, and your morning commute is less, coffee in hand, and more saddle sore and slightly hallucinating. Let's take a moment to visualize this fabulous new existence. You sit on your horse, a small dot against an overwhelming expanse of dirt and sky, feeling both liberated and terribly alone. It's a classic cowboy moment, or as I like to think of it, a mini midlife crisis on 4 legs. With each jarring trot, you remember precisely how fragile life can feel when surrounded by nature's wilderness and the thick silence that comes with it. There's a stark clarity that comes with realizing you are, in fact, very small, and it gets real. You can hear the distant howl of the wind, sounding suspiciously like a singing banshee, but probably just your average tumbleweed. Suddenly, you're acutely aware of every goof-up in your life while the horizon stretches before you like an existential riddle wrapped in a touch of weirdness. Why did you think cattle driving was a good idea? Were those pictures of rugged cowboys from your childhood really as glamorous as they seemed, or just an era of questionable grooming habits? Imagine the scene unfolding before you, your fellow cowboys clumsily huddled together, trying to hold back existential dread with nothing but a few winks and a shovel full of beef jerky. You catch a whiff of one guy, we'll call him Dusty, who smells like he's been rolling in a combination of horse sweat and expired dreams. Yet, here you are, stuck in this vastness without a soul in sight, pondering deeply on an assortment of life's unanswerable questions. Like why you didn't invest in more than one clean pair of socks before heading out. The horse you're riding has a mind of its own. Maybe it's an allegory for your life. Who knows? It seems determined to trot off into the sunset, preferably without you. At this moment, you're left wondering whether this is what freedom feels like, or if it's just nature's sarcastic way of reminding you that civilization never looked so appealing. Let's switch gears here, shall we? There you are, traversing miles of prairie with a belly grumbling like thunder. But what's for dinner, you ask? Oh, sweet relief. Just take your pick from the gourmet menu of beef jerky. And what goes great with that? Cold beans that could double as the mysterious tarmac of a dystopian future. Truly, eating on the cattle trail is less about nutrition and quite a bit more about survival of the fittest, or in your case, perhaps merely survival of the hungriest. Forgotten your spice rack back home? Better get used to the taste of dusty disappointment, because that's on the menu tonight. Days turn to weeks, each one a vivid blur of cattle bellowing, bodies shaking, and camaraderie that smells remarkably like wet leather. You might think that a cowboy's life is all about lassoing cattle and galloping toward the sunset, but in reality, it feels more like a poorly organized obstacle course, where the only reward is bald patches on your thighs and nightly conversations about who will brave the next mystery stew. And let's not forget the moments of reflection while sitting on your horse, quite literally sitting and grasping the existential rope of your life. You glance around, fully aware that you are an island in a sea of masculinity and strangely shaped cowboy hats. Here you are with the realization that the prairie might swallow you whole and no one would bat an eye because, after all, Who wants to fuss over just another tired cowboy with a baffling assortment of life choices? As you settle into the rhythm of this strange existence, every jolt of your horse serves as a reminder that freedom comes with a cost measured in sheer awkwardness. You can't help but chuckle softly as tumbleweeds dance by, laughing at your misfortunes, while you channel your inner philosopher. Surviving this cattle trail isn't just about endurance. It's really about mastering the art of braving bizarre circumstances, awkwardness, and that peculiar sensation of camaraderie where everyone shares the same unwashed garments. So as you drift off into sweet cowboy slumberland, surrounded by your motley crew of dusty misfits, and even dustier aspirations, just remember, life on the trail isn't about basking in glory, but rather figuring out how to laugh through the chaos. And believe me, next time you face an overwhelming situation, you can confidently say, hey, at least I'm not alone on the cattle trail of life. Sweet dreams, partner. May they be filled with more comfort than a sack of beans and the magical promise of a clean pair of socks. ***. Chapter 11. The Supreme Torture Device. Saddle up for misery. ***. Hey guys. Tonight, we're tackling something rougher than your great-aunt's knitting project. The notorious cowboy saddle of the 1870 seconds. Imagine this monumental contraption, a leather beast so unforgiving, it makes an Iron Maiden look like a cozy reading nook. A seat designed for endurance riding that feels as if you're perched atop a medieval torture device with a horn, no less, that seems specifically engineered to remind you of every poor decision you've ever made in life. So, let's set the scene. You've just climbed atop this hellish throne with dreams of rugged independence and aspirations to become the cowboy of your childhood fantasies. But let's temper those fantasies with a pinch of the unromanticized truth, shall we? You might as well be attempting to ride a rhinoceros while wearing a cactus as a hat. Spoiler, it's going to get painful quickly. That snug, deep seat. More like a pit of despair, where your behind may just mark the historical significance of endurance. The horn, which you naively thought was for gripping during those adrenaline-pumping gallops, quickly becomes a malevolent reminder of where your body really shouldn't make contact on a 12-hour ride over rock and ravine. It's like trying to enjoy a leisurely ride on a roller coaster with half the support stolen away and the other half dubious at best. Now picture this. Mountains of cattle stretching to the horizon, an army of cows all mooing a dissonant choir of indifference to your struggles and the glaring agony in your seat. Do you hear that faint echo? It's your behind pleading for a break, every bounce turning your saddle into a personal torture chamber that hosts uninvited thoughts like, is this leather feeling hotter than the sun? And I can't believe I left my favorite pair of sweatpants back in town. The really killer paradox is that, much like an inflatable punching bag, every time you think you're doing fine, you hit a bump, a jagged rock that sends your whole body jerking forward, smacking into, you guessed it, the horn. It's like being thrown into the rough draft of your own life, as a slapstick comedy, comedic timing included, but no cushioning for your poor posterior. But let's take a moment to appreciate the cavalry of discomfort, your fellow cowhands. They swagger alongside you, proudly ignorant to the enjoyment that downtime seemed to promise back in the days of dreaming about the Wild West. These guys might have brains the size of a walnut, and frankly, that walnut may just be jammed beneath the saddle horn, vibrating against bone and debilitating pride. And they think they're so tough, wearing perfectly weathered attire that reeks of months without a whiff of soap, reinforced by the undeniable aroma of countless cattle. But as you chaotically shift your weight back and forth, wondering why a saddle wasn't designed with some kind of automatic massage feature, you stop careening between pride and despair, realizing disappointment is the true currency of cowboy life. Imagine lunch on the trail, a little break while balancing on your aching bottom, gnawing at some jerky that feels like chewing on an old boot. The leather jerky is oddly chewier, perhaps designed to test the limits of not only your patience but also your jaw muscles. Oh, sweet relief. You can almost hear your body sigh. If I eat this whole hunk, I may just be rendered immobile in the saddle, but at least I won't have to endure another minute in that seat. Oh, but let's not forget the cattle themselves. They can sense your discomfort, you know. They're the audience, watching the spectacle unfold with what can only be described as cowish glee, giving you looks that not even a low-grade soap opera could capture. Every wayward moo is like the universe doing its best. You've just got to laugh, nudge directly in your ribs. As the sun blares down, wearing its most relentless face, you start to wonder whether your saddle is, in fact, a public health hazard. At this point, you're in full reflection mode, delving into the deeper questions of life. Questions such as, why did I think spending 12 hours in a device explicitly built for pain was a good idea? And where do I even send a strongly worded letter to the saddle maker? The days drag on, with each passing moment punctuated by the unfortunate realization that you are, indeed, trapped in an uncomfortable relationship with your poor trusty steed. He seems to enjoy the open range just fine, while you are left exploring the vastness of your own poor choices from the confines of a saddle that probably has a recorded history of its own struggles for comfort. So, as you lay drifting into a gentle slumber, reminiscing about the day's absurdities, complete with sore muscles and a mind swarming with neurotic thoughts, consider this a lesson in cowboy philosophy. While you may not achieve the rugged independence you dreamed of, you've learned the fine art of character building through laden discomfort. May your dreams be filled with softer seats and a good pair of sweatpants, shining brightly like the stars overhead, unaffiliated with the rigid history of saddles, cattle, and bad decisions. Sweet dreams, partner. After all, you survived the saddle ride. You can conquer anything life throws at you next. Chapter 12. The lessons of sitting and suffering. Riding with Lefty ***. Hey guys. Tonight, we're diving into a world as cozy as a cactus pillow fight. Life on the cattle trail of the 1,870 seconds. Imagine being dragged along a dusty path, alongside a herd of moo machines, bouncing on a saddle more torturous than a dentist's waiting room. The air is thick with cow perfume, a unique blend of sweat, leather, and full-on regret over the decision to become a cowboy. Before we saddle up with our trusty steed Lefty, let's take a moment for a little inspirational self-reflection. Have you ever thought about how sitting can sometimes feel like a form of medieval torture? Like when you accidentally sit on your remote and can't get up for 10 awkward minutes? Yeah, it's about like that. And what's with those large hats? Is it a fashion statement, or just an elaborate way to hold in all the bad ideas your friends might suggest? So, as we prepare to gallop through the highs and lows of the cattle trails, I invite you to dim the lights, soften your pillow, perhaps place a cold compress right on that spot where your great-aunt's cat decided to scratch you last Thanksgiving. Settle into your own saddle of comfort and get cozy because the Wild West is waiting for you. But let's ponder for a moment. What do you think a truly good cowboy breakfast entails? Is it coffee so bitter it practically recites poetry about loneliness? Or perhaps it's dirt biscuits that require dental insurance just to survive? And what about hygiene? Did cowboys ever ponder showering, thinking of the last time you had to wrestle a soap bottle on an airplane? Imagine having to wrangle dust, sweat, and grease without your precious suds. Life on the cattle trail wasn't just rough, it was epic in its absurdity. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1,870 on the cattle trail, where every sunrise brings a new promise of discomfort and dusty trails. The first thing you notice is a pair of stunningly unfriendly eyes glaring at you, Lefty, your horse. Not the affectionate steed from children's books, rather the embodiment of all the choices that led you into a dusty mess. His huffing breath likely smells like a mix of last week's hay and yesterday's dreams of a far-off pasture. Now let's take a moment to climb aboard this majestic beast. You swing your leg over, and with all the grace of a drunken flamingo, you land squarely in your saddle. The moment you settle in, your backside makes contact with leather that is equal parts welcoming and sinister. Say hello to the saddle that makes a bed of nails look like a plush pillow top. As you nudge Lefty with your heels, you begin to wonder if he too takes bets on how long before you start wailing like a banshee. Riding on this contraption, you start checking the saddle cinch with all the urgency of a firefighter checking a smoke alarm. You mutter a half-hearted prayer, asking for your left leg to hold strong. It's a small but vital ask, hinging on whether you'll be the hero of your own cartoonish adventure or just another casualty of the cattle trail. As Lefty starts to trot, the world around you rocks like a ship caught in a storm. Every bump leads you to question the very structure of human life. Are we merely spherical sacks of bones and sinew destined for uncomfortable rides? The cattle around you compete in a chorus of low moos, each moo sounding like a cow's version of "you got this," mixed with "why don't you just walk?" Let's talk about the cattle for a second. Their gentle swaying as they plod along is both mesmerizing and terrifying. Their rhythmic movements become the soundtrack to your suffering, much like a song you can't quite shake off no matter how many times you try to change the channel. And as the sun blares down with a vengeance, you begin addressing the weather as if it's a bad roommate. "Hey, Mr. Sun, maybe take a day off, huh? Through this bumpy ride." Your thoughts drift to other unfortunate outcomes, like having your saddle horn jab your stomach every time Lefty decides to show off his cowboy skills. In moments of reflection between bounces, you might ponder why we can't make a saddle with built-in air conditioning. Shouldn't modern cowboying involve better products? Because clearly, there's a market for saddles too that doesn't feel like medieval torture meets a gymnastics slam. But fear not, dear cowboy in training. You can find solace in the camaraderie of your fellow cattle droppers, who cycle between hearty laughter and cries of sheer agony. These men, each with stories so tall they rival the nearest mountain range, encourage you to give your best stoic face. After all, a cowboy is only as tough as the wild, rabid, tumbleweed grass that floats by and mocks. You realize that you're among a distinctly odd company, much like family reunions during Thanksgiving. Lunch on the trail is, of course, a treat. It involves leather jerky that promises the charm of shoe leather, all while you balance precariously atop your equine chariot. As you gnaw on this ancient culinary artifact, your mind wanders wondering if this is what cross-training feels like, muscles working hard for scraps of something that was apparently once an animal. So as you settle into this wonderfully absurd existence, let the rhythm of cattle calling, saddle soreness, and deep philosophical musings help you drift off into a dreamland where there's no such thing as uncomfortable saddle time. May you wake up refreshed, perhaps on a soft bed in a world of modern conveniences, because if you can endure the cattle trail, who knows what else you can conquer. Sweet dreams, partner. The Wild West was tough, but so are you. Asterisk, asterisk, Chapter 13, The Great Grapple of Freedom, a cowboy versus the stirrup, asterisk, asterisk. Hey guys. Tonight, we embark on a journey as precarious as a tightrope walker on roller skates. Surviving the cowboy cattle trails of the 1,870 seconds. Imagine yourself clinging to a horse while a herd of ornery cows decides that the grass over yonder looks much greener because it's definitely not your boot thereafter. Just think about it, having a furious cow on one side and your own chaotic thoughts on the other. Honestly, that's a mental juggling act worse than finding your car keys on a Monday morning. Before we dive into the turbulence of the cattle trail, can I ask you something? Ever felt the intense validation of desperately yanking your foot out of a stirrup, like you're saving yourself from a particularly embarrassing and slow-motion fall? Or have you tried holding onto a life jacket while it's being dragged behind a speeding boat? Spoiler alert, it's not as fun as it sounds. And how about those moments when you find yourself wondering if a mustache is just an elaborate way for men to hide their secrets while simultaneously collecting dust bunnies? Now let's fasten our saddles, dim the lights, and get a little cozy. Picture yourself nestled in an impossibly uncomfortable saddle, wondering how you'll survive this wild escapade. Just remember, every scenario poses a question, like why the dog never seems to notice the mailman. Do they have a secret deal to keep us all in chaos? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1870, right smack dab in the heart of the American cattle trail, where every sunrise brings a load of cow dung and a new measure of discomfort. Just as you think your day can't get any better, you look down and what's that? Ah, yes, the stirrup. What a delightful little contraption, designed to hold you securely, while also ensuring you learn the fine art of acrobatics, should your horse decide to become a contestant in the most dramatic horse of all time pageant. Let's talk about that moment, shall we? You're minding your own business, maybe attempting to channel your inner rodeo star, when Lefty, your most treacherous ally, sneezes. In your stirrup-clad foot's defense, it's immediately clear that it didn't truly see this coming, like the time you mistakenly thought your colleague invited you for coffee instead of economic forecasting. The world tilts sideways. Your heart swells as you realize that if Lefty decides to throw in the towel and ditch you, you might find yourself dragged through the brush like yesterday's lunch leftovers. In a twist of fate, you find that moment of clarity the stirrup is not your friend. With all the finesse of a cat awkwardly attempting to use a vacuum, you yank your boot out just in time. You feel as though you've escaped gravity itself. The brush from the undergrowth nearly grabs at your jeans, grasping to tether you back to a reality you haven't quite accepted yet. Those who haven't faced the great stirrup wrestling match cannot comprehend the chaos that's unfolded in mere seconds. Suddenly, you're left teetering unsteadily atop lefty, almost like that scene from a movie where a pirate walks the plank while yelling, "No, I'm a landlubber." It dawns on you that survival hinges not only on not being flung into a cactus patch but also on your sense of balance, which is presently under review as your body tries to comprehend the cartoonish gravity of it all. Now, imagine for a moment if this were a modern-day scenario. You'd be like a road cyclist encountering an unexpected obstacle. One glance up, and wham, you almost become a very stylish pancake on the asphalt. Yet here, in the middle of your cosmically absurd cowboy adventure, you somehow find solace in the shared experience with your fellow cattle droppers. They're all too familiar with the sensation of horseback school of hard knocks, and are quick to chuckle at your unfortunate maneuverings. The cattle, ever so gentle in appearance, seem to judge your spectacle as they plod along. Each moan and groan from them feels a little bit like taking a selfie after a long day. Good luck capturing that moment of grace, while the cows convey nothing but disdain for our shaky efforts at elegance. It's like the universe uniting in a cacophony of, "You're doing great, sweetie," through a structured chorus of low mooing. Your fellow cowpokes, perhaps wise beyond their dusty years, raise their hats in solidarity. After all, they've been through their own peculiar stirrup experiences dealing with a portion of stubbornness reserved only for a handful of unpredictable steeds. So, how do they cope? Well, by dragging their shoddy boots and making dubious life choices, much like we do today, coffee runs that resemble unsanctioned nutrition seminars. Let's not forget, dear listener, that the disappointment of lunch on the trail is rivaled only by your fading optimism that dinner might offer something without batter. You gnaw on something chewy that once had a leak of flavor. Some would argue it's the equivalent of horsehide jerky, which is about as appetizing as it sounds. All the while, your mind leaps from the cattle trail back to what's for dinner in your cozy modern kitchen. Do you remember the last time you regretted trying to make your own artisan bread? Spoiler alert, it didn't work as planned, did it? So, as we meander through this mildly chaotic existence, let the rhythmic sway of livestock, your heroic battle with the stirrups on lefty, and your dreams of curries and cakes help you float off into a world where danger is but a distant whisper. Because if you can survive the cattle trail's wild absurdity, my friend, you've already proven you can conquer just about anything. Sweet dreams, cowpoke. ***. Chapter 14. A night on the trail. Cattle calming and cowboy chilling. ***. Hey guys, tonight we're gearing up for an adventure that'll make your last trip to the grocery store look as thrilling as watching paint dry. Picture this. The great cattle drives of the 1872. It's a time when cowboys swayed through the American West like dainty ballerinas, quite an illusion, of course, since they were actually knee-deep in cow dung and battling the elements with little more than a hat and a questionable life choice attitude. Before we saddle up, here's a fun thought. Have you ever tried to calm a room full of toddlers while simultaneously debating whether you've left the oven on? Or better yet, wrangle a dozen hyperactive puppies on a Saturday morning? Yeah, that's the vibe we're channeling tonight. But instead of little feet and slobbery tongues, we've got massive bovines thinking. What if I just sprinted times in the opposite direction? If this sounds too outrageous to relate to your own life, allow me to introduce the unexpected chaos that is our favorite cowboy, who may just be a little too detached from reality for your liking. So, grab a comfy blanket, maybe dim the lights like they're about to reveal your online dating profile, and let's step back together in time. Imagine now that you've just woken up in 1870, the year everything went sideways for aspiring cowboy poets, and people simply looking to enjoy their beef on a bun. Congratulations, you're now nestled in the night, surrounded by a herd of cattle, snuggled up to a pile of hay that smells suspiciously like yesterday's lunch. Feel that brisk evening air. Yes, that biting cold is your new companion, and it may overwhelm your lungs as you prepare to muster the greatest courage of your current existence, a little thing called being a night-watching cowboy. Let's talk about the night watch for a moment. Imagine you're hauntingly alone, wrapped in a cloak more creaky than an old floorboard, trying your best to resemble a sentry of the cattle realm while not discovering new and creative ways to eat dirt. Under a sprawling blanket of stars resembling an overzealous Christmas light display, the only sounds are the distant mooing of cattle and your own melodic serenade of confusion and despair. It's basically a live-action country music video filled with bewildered rhythms and melodic pondering. And then, there's the lone cowboy, a stoic character with a hat tilted back like he's trying to impress ghosts. This brave soul is circling the sleeping herd, humming an unintelligible lullaby that's surprisingly soothing, given that it's essentially what comes around goes around, on repeat, but with a little more cow. Seriously, whoever thought we would criminally underestimate the power of a good lullaby? You know, as if cows widely benefited from the sound of music, featuring grumpy stakeholders. As you witness this awkward serenade, the atmosphere thickens with the soft harmony of imagination-drenched cattle calisthenics and sleepy bovine groans. The aroma of hay wafts gently, mixing with the earthy sense of your expectations about what this experience would entail. Mostly back pain, and you can hear every footstep echoing like anticipation for a surprise party that may or may not happen. Have you ever held a surprise birthday party for yourself but forgot to invite all your friends? Me neither, but times is basically that moment. Now, let's pivot to the potential stampede scenario. Perhaps this beefy concert will escalate into a full-blown festival right before your eyes. What do you even do? Should you panic and grab a megaphone to announce bovine boot camp? Or simply play the world's smallest violin? Spoiler alert! The calming effects of your haunting melody may not work quite as effectively as you hope, because nothing quite beats the sound of actual chaos charging towards you. Imagine that. Rush a wild orchestra of hooves galloping off into destiny, each one of those four-legged friends bypassing your expected plans like a squirrel dodging traffic. Your heart races as you realize your evening's peaceful cattle watch has now transformed into a high-octane chase scene where you're the star, if the film were directed by someone highly confused about animal behavior. But wait, our mysterious cowboy isn't without his quirks. Here's where it gets even funnier. This cowboy, in his quest to subdue any potential chaos, might be throwing out absurd whispers of reassurance like, "Hey there, Bessie. Just chill. You've got a good life ahead with endless grass and lots of cuddles." As if this cattle gal has already subscribed to the good vibes only mantra and is about to sweep through the night unfazed by the madness enveloping you like last night's questionable taco. Cattle, much like certain relatives around the holidays, can be surprisingly judgmental. Those sleepy eyes occasionally snap open, gauging the absurdity of the moment, while you sit there, pleading with your own inner stability. The cattle seem embroiled in a silent debate, swaying their heads and visually rolling their eyes, as if to say, "Honey, you think this is your first rodeo?" Even with the comedic absurdity looming overhead, the hum of the night manages to quilt everyone together with a sense of unity. There's a camaraderie in this chaotic beauty, a recognition that beating the odds with a gallon of enthusiasm is truly a wild ride. So rest assured, dear fellow traveler through history, because if your heart can manage to not transform this serene scene into a runaway rodeo, you'll just maybe survive the night. So, close your eyes, retain that dusty trail in your thoughts, and after a long day of cattle whispering and truly absurd nighttime battles, allow the sweet sounds of the American West to lull you gently to sleep. Sweet dreams, cowboy. ***. Chapter 15. The Point of No Return. Negotiating Hooves. And Hilarity ****. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we embark on a journey that's more complex than untangling your phone charger after a full day of living like a normal human being, surviving the cowboy cattle trail of the 1,870 seconds. This is the era when men and the occasional brave woman bravely rode through dust storms, dodging both cattle and metaphorical bullets, all in the pursuit of a dinner that definitely didn't involve organic kale. Spoiler alert, the cows were not interested in farm-to-table philosophy. But before we dive deep into the muck and mire of a cowpoke's life, here's a thought. Have you ever tried to negotiate the speed of a bus full of tourists while silently panicking about the last slice of pizza at home? Or how about trying to convince a toddler that nap time is a fun idea? Now visualize this chaos, multiplied by a herd of several hundred mooing critters. Yup, that's our cowboy's life. So grab your plushiest blanket, dim the lights like you're casually auditioning for a low-budget noir film, and let's saddle up for this wild ride that's not quite as romantic as the movies would have you believe. Allow yourself to imagine the scent of leather and hooves while considering what truly goes on behind the scenes. Picture a cowboy, perched ahead of the herd like a raccoon on a dumpster, focused, slightly unhinged, and determined to manipulate the pace of this four-legged parade. As he shifts his weight, he glances back at the lead steer, like a telegraph operator reading urgent signals. Are the ears up or down? Is the lead steer contemplating a sudden escape into the nearby cactus patch, filled with the same well-being vibe as your last Monday morning? Let's talk about this moment where nature and cattle meet in awkward partnership. The point cowboy is often a curious creature, you see. His job is to ensure the herd doesn't decide to spontaneously transform into a runaway stampede, which could lead to him either getting trampled or, potentially worse, losing his brand of manly swag. Imagine directing traffic at a chaotic intersection of beefy madness while simultaneously trying to channel your inner yoga teacher, gentle but firm, persuasive, with a touch of, please don't eat my lunch. It's like attempting to declutter a hoarder's garage while dressed in a chicken suit. Yeah, that awkward. Yet somehow, men like our focused cowboy do just that every day, constantly adjusting his reins like he's training for a rodeo about how to hold it together when everything is falling apart. As he glances over his shoulder, he might even catch a wise cracking steer, roll its eyes in disdain, as if to say, really, dude? You think you can boss me around? Picture it. The night air is crisp, as still as a statue in a museum, but not the good kinds of statues, more like that expressionless one no one remembers the name of. The sound of cattle, shifting, munching on non-existent grass, and the occasional disgruntled lowing create a symphony of sounds. Add in the light tinkling of the cowboy's gear, rattling against his worn leather jacket like a bad wind chime. In the same way you tune out the sounds of your neighbor arguing about their latest home improvement project, the cowboy learns to embrace these absurd melodies of nature. He scans the horizon as far as his dusty hat allows. Please, just let there not be an unexpected migration toward the nearest town, because who knows what could happen. An uneducated steer could bum rush the local saloon, become an accidental dance partner, and possibly unleash chaos on the town like a twisted episode of Dallas. But let's be real. Focusing on one lead steer's ears isn't all that serene, especially when you've got a whole herd looking at you like mediocre on the best day cafeteria food. As the day drags on, the pacing needs to change, and everyone knows, cows and change are not exactly best friends. Hey Bessie, how about we take a leisurely stroll instead of a mad dash towards freedom? Spoiler alert, that's never really how it goes down. Talk about trying to convince a cat to take a bath. And just when you think you've got control over this mid-tempo livestock ramble, out pops a rogue calf, a real-life maverick in the making, sprinting past like it's entered a secret race against fate. At this point, all your careful negotiation skills dissolve faster than ice on a sunny day, and suddenly you're chasing a baby cow like you're starring in a slapstick comedy. The sheer absurdity of it is both relatable and frustrating as you question, why didn't my life come with a manual for this? So, whether your cowboy finds himself training the herd to be more fashionably late to an important dinner or racing against the misadventures of a runaway calf, the reality is that each day on the cattle trail unfolds like a whimsical tale, complete with chaotic moments and unexpected escapades. Think of it as a practical joke from history itself, delivered with a sprinkle of dust and a whole lot of confusion. Now, take a moment to reflect on that vivid feel of the cowboy's reality. The grit, the laughter, the full-body workouts akin to a month's worth of gym fumbles. So breathe it all in, dear listener, as the sounds of the American West weave into a tone of slumber, inviting you to let go and dream of all the ridiculous things life throws at you, while in pursuit of a gentle steer and a side of baked beans. Sweet dreams, cowboy. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 16. The Chuck Wagon Chronicles. A Culinary Clash on Wheels. Asterisk asterisk. Hey guys. Welcome back to tonight's episode of mildly interesting history, the unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail. Trust me, it's more thrilling than watching paint dry on a fence post, at least, we hope. Our focus tonight? The legendary Chuck Wagon, a mobile kitchen that rolls across the prairie with more flair than a cat in a cowboy hat. Picture it, a battered mule pulling a wooden cart, overflowing with barrels and pots, making you question why meals back then consisted of whatever could tolerate a cross-country bumpy ride. But first, let's ponder the burning questions of the Chuck Wagon lifestyle. Have you ever found yourself desperate for a snack while stuck in traffic behind a notoriously slow-moving vehicle? Or have you felt the existential horror of burnt toast while trying to impress a brunch date? Now, imagine a Chuck Wagon churning out meals in the blazing sun while the aroma of beans competes with the earthy scent of cattle. Welcome to Meal Prep 1872 style. Congratulations, you've just been whisked away to the expansive prairies of the American West in the year 1870. And somewhere, meandering through this magnificent blend of dust and sweat, is Cookie, the self-proclaimed overlord of the Chuck Wagon, guarding his treasure like a grumpy dragon on a diet. With his coal-black apron tied snugly around his waist and a permanent frown etched deeper than a cartographer's best work, Cookie is the guy who's convinced everyone that his sourdough is the elixir of life. Now, let's take a moment to imagine Cookie. He's not your typical four-star chef, more like your cranky uncle who makes a mean chili but holds a grudge against all vegetables. You know, the type always insisting that this is how we used to do it, while this how includes way too many beans and chilled biscuits that could double as doorstops. As the Chuck Wagon rolls over the uneven terrain, it rattles like a band of misfit maracas, causing everyone in the vicinity to question their life choices. The melodious creaking is only occasionally interrupted by Cookie's battle cries. Watch it, you knuckleheads. That flour doesn't grow on trees. Yes, Cookie takes his kitchen kingdom seriously, even if it does wobble more than a toddler on roller skates. Inside the Chuck Wagon, the aroma of beans fills the air like a distant whisper, neither inviting nor revolting, but somewhere comfortably in between. When you open the wagon's doors, a cloud of something resembling flowered humidity greets you, as if the wagon itself is beckoning. Welcome to the culinary adventure. We have frankly no idea what you're in for. Let's paint this scene a bit better. The rough-cut wooden shelves house barrels of flour, beans, and that coveted sourdough starter, which many considered the trail's greatest treasure. Ever had a mystery condiment you weren't sure was from last month's barbecue? That's the kind of faith you need to have in this sourdough starter. Is it alive? Probably. Is it growing into something sentient? Most definitely. But when hunger calls, few questions remain. With a dust storm brewing and a herd of cattle enduring their own drama a few yards away, Cookie stirs the pots over the fire, muttering like a caffeinated philosopher. If only these beans had some personality. And isn't that a relatable thought? Just think about a time you were stuck at a party, surrounded by slightly boring cheese trays, while you yearned for that one friend who always brings the karaoke machine. Whispered tales suggest that Cookie's most famous bean recipe is more of a mystical journey than a meal. Legend has it that one bite transports you to another realm, preferably one where no one suggests sharing food. I've got a secret ingredient, he boasts, only for it to be a heap of regretful spices he found at Figda's, the bottom of an ancient barrel. You don't question it. It's either feast or fainting away from sheer hunger amidst the prairie. Suddenly, the tranquility of cooking is interrupted by the infamous trials of trail life cattle issues, rogue bull activity, or a surprise visit from a swarm of curious prairie dogs. No one's quite sure what they want, but they all seem oddly determined about getting into Cookie's stash of beans. Hey, scram! This isn't a buffet, he yells, wielding a wooden spoon like a knight defending his castle. You can almost taste the drama, and as Cookie wrestles with both cattle and critters, you might feel a surge of empathy for this culinary warrior. Who among us hasn't dealt with unruly house guests, or sustained a stubborn DIY project while balancing a half-eaten pizza? Everyone plays double duty in this hustle. In the distance, a calf chooses this moment to frolic into the Chuck Wagon vicinity, clearly convinced that ditching its herd is a great idea. It races toward Cookie, thinking, oh, a large pot, sounds like prime grazing territory. Now, if it were a sitcom, this moment would be the amusing blooper reel. Cookie, the angry chef chasing a rogue calf, while brandishing a spatula. Picture it, the culinary chaos, the half-dusted trail, and a blustery gust of wind sending flour clouds around like nature's own whiteout condition. And just like that, you're reminded of your own chaotic days, whether it's losing track of ingredients during a family dinner or maybe simply trying to wrangle a recipe that seems more akin to mad scientist's notes. Life, both in the 1,870 seconds and today, often feels like a dance between calamity and culinary creations. So, as the chuck wagon sways in the gentle prairie breeze, you can't help but cherish the absurdity of Cookie's existence, a life filled with potential catastrophe, yet serving up beans with unyielding style. Because after all, you can't spell survival without a side of humor. And with that colorful reckoning, let yourself drift into a peaceful slumber, comforted by the thought that even the most chaotic kitchen can serve up comfort. Wherever you find yourself, be it in a chuck wagon or your modern abode, means no more unpacking life's flavors, one mishap at a time. Sweet dreams, dear listener, ***. Chapter 17, Sips of Survival, The Cowboy Coffee Chronicles, ***. Hey guys. Welcome back to tonight's episode of Time's mildly interesting history, the unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail, * tonight. We're diving head first, or perhaps face first, into a barrel of beans, into something hotter than a prairie midday sun, the battle for caffeine in the rough and tumble world of the cowboy. Picture yourself in the 1,870 seconds, struggling over the stringent 6-hour debate of whether to gamble on coffee or to stick with something mysterious, like that stew from last week. Now, before we saddle up for this wild ride, let's ponder the vexing questions swirling around this time period. How does one even manage to brew a cup of coffee with limited supplies and a rickety chuck wagon that seems more like a runaway jalopy than a kitchen? Ever tried breaking open a tin can with nothing but a rusty nail and a pessimism that rivals the weather forecast? And what about that coffee? Does it have more personality than the last 5 people you dated or less? Isn't it surreal how one moment you're enjoying a cozy cafe and the next you're on the range, risking dental emergencies with a drink that tastes like burnt rubber? Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1870, somewhere in the heart of Texas with dust motes dancing in the air and also on your breakfast griddle. Just beyond the horizon, cattle trot like they're auditioning for Time's America's Got Talent, * and you, dear listener, are part of this chaos, complete with a dented, blackened tin mug in your hand and coffee that could probably double as motor oil. Now, let's sip this succulent history. You find yourself sitting around a hastily constructed fire, surrounded by a choir of grumpy cowboys with more scruff than skin. Picture yourself holding a mug filled with thick, bitter coffee that looks suspiciously like a small-scale oil spill. It's an acquired taste, kind of like skydiving or eating a ghost pepper. Thrilling, yet fraught with regret. As you hold that trusty tin mug, you can't help but marvel at the sheer determination of the cowboy who brewed it, a fellow named Slim, whose idea of a gourmet coffee was mixing yesterday's grounds with fresh prairie dust. You may wonder why he doesn't just enjoy a quieter existence on a bar stool in some saloon, sipping something sweet and sticky. But that's the mystery of the Wild West. Every sip from this mud-like concoction tells a story. You can taste the dust of the trail, the charred muck from the makeshift grill, and a hint of desperation like the last pair of clean socks after laundry day. The coffee's bitterness is reminiscent of the far less pleasant parts of life. The endless long rides, the sore backs, and of course, nearly stepping in something that could potentially ruin your boots for good. You know what I mean. It's like that last piece of avocado toast that always tastes too ripe. As the sun shows off its golden prowess on the horizon, you feel the warmth of the campfire battling the chill that creeps in with the dusk. Slim grumbles as he cradles his own mug, signaling an overwhelming disagreement with the idea that this coffee might just keep him alive for another few hours. You gotta drink till you're practically alive from the waist up. He slurs through a mustache that seems to house entire ecosystems. Can you imagine that? The morning ritual of filling your mug with something so strong. It could probably wake the dead, or at least the cowboy who just stumbled out of his tent looking like he wrestled an angry armadillo. Ever had a morning where you wish you could just blend in with the pillows and not face the world? These cowboys practically lived that life, dragging themselves from their sleep of questionable quality, fueled by this tragic elixir. As the coffee warms your hands, you notice the prairie's vast silence. Well, semi-silence. It's juxtaposed with the steadfast chewing of a nearby cow, whose thoughts you can almost hear. Why am I part of this circus? It's the kind of deep philosophical pondering one tends to engage in when the closest thing resembling a brunch is a heap of baked beans served on the same plate as your last bad decision. The ambience is serene until one brave cowboy, let's call him Hank, tries to express his enthusiasm for this coffee concoction with more vigor than precision, inadvertently sending a splash right onto his shirt. Cue a collective stifled chuckle from the other cowboys, whose laughter dances in the air like a mischievous breeze. That splash could very well be the first official attempt at a Wild West fashion statement. The cowboy sheet, which consists largely of dirt and burnt coffee stains. And now, whilst you're being serenaded by the moos and squeaks of the cattle flitting about, you can't help but feel a warm cocoon of camaraderie envelop you like an awkward, a hug from your third cousin. Maybe the coffee isn't just about survival, it's a lifeline, a secret handshake among brothers of the prairie. That bitter brew, it connects stories, each tale just a sip away. So, as the night draws on and the prairie stars twinkle like distant cities and long-lost ambitions, you cradle your filthy mug, the remnants of hope swirling at the bottom like so much dust. You know, perhaps deep down, that tomorrow you'll brave another mug of that eccentric mixture, because if you can swing a saddle, dodge a stampede, and still drink coffee that nearly qualifies as an Olympic sport, then you've officially survived the woes of cowboy life. In the absurdity of it all, there lies your slumbering sanctuary. Let yourself drift into sleep, clinking your tin mug against the one in your dreams, a delightful reminder that even the cowboys found humor in their darkest brews. Sweet dreams await, dear friend. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 18, The Great Bacon Debate, To Eat or Not to Eat. Asterisk, asterisk. Hey guys. Welcome back to tonight's episode of Time's mildly interesting history, the unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail. Asterisk, grab your saddles, dim the lights, and get cozy because tonight we're venturing into a culinary conundrum more perplexing than your refrigerator's mysterious leftovers. Ever stand at the brink of a decision like choosing between a questionable taco from last week and the last slice of pizza, both echoing in your memory as past meals gone awry? Welcome to the Wild West, where bacon is about to become your best frenemy. But before we sculpt our dream life out of sizzling ham, let me ask you, have you ever sniffed something you've cooked, inhaled deeply, and consciously avoided eye contact with anyone else in the room? Or perhaps you've stared at a puddle of grease and thought, does this add flavor, or is it just signaling collective doom? You are not alone, the friend, the cowboys of the 1,870 seconds were mastering this art while swatting away flies that thought they belonged on the menu. So let's saddle up and dive into the delectable horrors awaiting our brave cowboy in this tale. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1870, right in the heart of Texas, where the only thing that smells worse than the 100 head of cattle nearby is your breakfast. Now, in front of you stands a barrel. This isn't your standard fishy pickle barrel. Oh no. This one is a grease-laden treasure of salted bacon. The true dilemma lies within. Is it edible, or simply a biography on the dangers of improper food storage? As you ponder the prospects, a gentle breeze carries the scent of sun-baked earth and, well, let's just say whatever it is, it's not great. The barrel looms in front of you, each layer of grease a historical testament to the accumulated wisdom of cowboys who once stared down similar culinary challenges. With a wary sigh, you lean over to get a whiff of that precious breakfast meat, your nose crinkling like a startled cow seeing its own reflection. The salted bacon stares back up at you, gleaming in the early morning sun like a dubious award for most likely to make you regret life choices. Your mind starts to wander. Do you really want to risk food poisoning in this desolate expanse? Take a sip of your now cooled coffee, reminiscent of a muddy stream, and weigh your options. You'd have better chances of decorating your own Pinterest page devoted to household hacks, or, perhaps, turd art, than figuring out the state of this bacon. While most mornings consist of careful deliberation over cold cereal, which in itself was a quirky modern-day phenomenon, these cowboys were playing food roulette. You find yourself caught in a curious thought spiral akin to contemplating whether your socks have enough stretch to tolerate 3 more days of wear. Ever wonder if your cereal could survive a week in a barrel? These cowboys certainly did. As you lift the grease-laden lid, a waft of smells assaults you, a mixture of salty despair and a life lived on the move. The bacon looks like it's been through a romantic saga of dubious relationship decisions and questionable life choices, yet a great cowboy knows that the charms of salt can do wonders. Your eyes watch the grease glisten like a mirage, a beautiful illusion of nourishment that might just lead to more cattle rustling in the near future. Finally, the moment has come. You feel like a contestant on a well-known survival show, facing a feast or famine situation that would perplex even the toughest judge on a reality competition. Balancing on the edge of ignorance and bravery, you scoop up a piece of bacon, debating whether this is, in fact, the world's oldest snack or just an invitation to bedlam. As you chew cautiously, you realize that the texture is somewhere between slightly alarming and surprisingly savory. It's a thrilling experience, akin to wearing last season's fashion trends. Nobody quite knows why it looks okay, but here you are, living dangerously. Is it best described as aged to perfection, or aged to possible regret? You might never find out, yet here you remain, munching down like a hero of culinary chaos. Little did you know, this nibble could lead to hours spent rolling on the ground with stomach pains worse than negotiating with a stubborn steer. But isn't that the fun of it all? The audible crunch of bacon mirrors your deepest fears. Every bite is an echo from the past, waging war against the air itself. Audacity takes a new form when you bite into a strip of bacon you just pray hasn't been haunting the barrel since the last cattle drive. With the first few chewable seconds still being a gamble, that salty strip begins to sink in like a well-intended party host, usable but not entirely reliable. You may feel lost in a cyclone of flavors, interwoven with the scents and chaos of prairie life. Each piece of bacon becomes a metaphor for risk and reward, a testament to a cowboy's grueling existence and his unwavering commitment to survive, or perhaps exploit a culinary crisis. And as the sun rises higher, casting shadows like old friends on the prairie, the notion of a breakfast that wields both hunger and hilarity wraps around you like the heat from that campfire you wish your coffee was closer to. You drop the last bits of greasy bacon, wondering if you've crossed the line from cowboy to legend. But one fact stays true. Out here, it takes guts and questionable life choices to make breakfast. So, as you contemplate your daring choices against a backdrop of sprawling grasslands and the occasional move from your 4-legged companions, you reflect on the absurdity of cowboy life. The success of surviving on bacon from a barrel coated in grease tells more tales than any campfire story ever could. Embrace the whimsy of the Wild West, dear friend, and let those bacon-induced thoughts dance you into the embrace of slumber. For the true cowboy knows, it's not just about surviving, it's about savoring every moment, even when it's giggle-inducingly questionable. Sweet dreams await, seasoned with a hint of mischief. Asterisk, Chapter 19, Stew on the Prairie, a culinary revelation. Asterisk, hey guys. Welcome back to tonight's episode of Time's mildly interesting history, the unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail. Asterisk, grab your saddles, dim the lights, and get cozy, because tonight we're diving headfirst into a bubbling pot of historical hilarity, simmering over a fire kindled by questionable life choices. Imagine a stew that smells like a combination of gym socks and misplaced ambition. Intrigued? You should be, because we're about to meet Cookie, the toothless culinary wizard of the cattle trail. Picture a kitchen that's 1 part rustic log cabin and 3 parts open air, where every meal is a survival celebration peppered with just a hint of existential dread, a little like ordering takeout from that sketchy place down the block, only with a lot more dust. Have you ever looked at your fridge and wondered how many days it has been since you last bought groceries? Well, Imagine being 8 days into a cattle drive with nothing but a kettle and a vague idea of what goes into an edible stew. Would you consider engineering a feast with a variety of leftovers that even the fridge gods would have questioned? Welcome to the Wild West. Simple decisions here often lead to epic culinary quandaries that would leave your modern home-cooked meals shaking in their boots. Now, drop into your imaginary time machine and brace yourself. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1870, right in the heart of Texas, where Cookie is ladling out mystery soup that would make any health inspector quit on the spot. The subtle dancing of sweat and dust highlights the steamy air as you peek over a kettle of stew, which promises to be as thrilling as it smells. Think of a cloud of confusion mixed with dire need for calories. As you hover above this bubbling pot of dubious delight, the aroma meanders into your nostrils, and you find yourself regretting not having a stronger sense of smell, because something meaty and utterly unidentifiable swims within. Is it possum, snake, or just a questionable gathering of whatever critter wandered too close to Cowboy Cookie's camp? It's like a game show contestant starkly aware that they might not survive to the next round of eliminations. Tonight's special is whatever we managed to catch. And it was not paying rent, that much is certain. Oh, but don't worry, underneath that layer of anxiety lies a little hope. Every cowboy knows the real secret. You can survive almost anything with a generous sprinkle of salt and bravado. Cookie, with his toothy grin, toothless grin, now stands proudly by the cooking fire, a human embodiment of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. He might also be saying, whatever it was has been sufficiently cooked to be almost edible. You watch as he expertly ladles soup into tin cups that have seen more adventures than most of us will ever experience. The color scheme has a certain earthiness to it, reminiscent of a muddy creek on a particularly dry summer day. Is that a potato? Oh no, friends, it's possibly a carrot masquerading as one growing their own identity crisis right before your puzzled eyes. Ever played a food guessing game, only to realize the answers lie beyond the comfort versus fear spectrum of taste? Well, here, you're all in. The stew takes center stage like a reluctant performer at a talent show, desperately wishing for an early exit. Perhaps it tastes like the love child of a stamped postal service form and a foot that's never seen a pedicure. If you're not hungry, just try to stop chuckling, you might choke on the humor. But what's life without side quests? Curious, you lean closer to eavesdrop on the campfire gossip. Cowboy banter floats around like camp smoke. Tales of daring cattle rustlers mixed with tales of escaping the relentless lasso of grim culinary fate, while happy speculation looms about the mystery meat's identity. Was that a snake, or the last of Cookie's understanding of animal anatomy? To each his own, it seems. And oh, the sounds surrounding this feast. The sizzling, crackling, and your stomach occasionally grumbling like it's auditioning for the role of a dramatic sidekick perfectly complement the chaotic atmosphere. Hold your breath as Cookie unveils the pot's contents. A glorious, gloppy heap designed to invoke both fear and the primal instinct to run away. But bravery has its dues, and the price is lifting that spoon. Imagine a world where flavors are akin to an awkward social interaction, a bit unexpected, occasionally rewarding, and filled with surprises no one anticipates. Each bite could land you in front of a campfire jury, facing the culinary committee of will they or won't they. In truth, at this stage of life on the cattle trail, showing courage just means testing your stomach's ability to endure a robust flavor experience. It's like roller coastering through a local taco truck while holding your breath. Eventually, the cowboy adage rings true. Any meal shared is a good meal, even if it's more adventurous than appetizing. You lean back, chuckling at the randomness of life, the limitless possibilities of late-night stew adventures, and how your friends would definitely file this under memorable misadventures if they had been here. So, as the fire dims and the evening turns tranquil, you reflect upon the unromantic yet absolutely essential nature of this meal. It's not just about survival on the cattle trail. It's about embracing the culinary chaos that comes along for the ride, every slurp and every mystery bite, telling a story that connects you to the audacious heart of a cowboy's journey under the vast Texas sky. Cozy up, dear friend, and let those chuckles send you into slumber, where breakfast adventures await you next. ***. Chapter 20. the cattle stampede. A symphony of hooves and hysteria asterisk. Hey guys, welcome back to tonight's episode of Time's mildly interesting history, the unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail. Asterisk, dim the lights, put on a fan, and settle in, because we're about to take a ride through the wild, Wild West, where the only thing more unpredictable than the weather is a herd of longhorns and the cowboys trying to corral them. Imagine yourself, not unlike a modern-day commuter stuck in morning traffic, only instead of honking horns and road rage, you're surrounded by the booming thunder of 2,000 longhorns galloping across the plains, their hooves pounding the earth like miniature earthquakes. Yes, you heard that right. No latte in hand, just a mixture of dirt, sweat, and adrenaline coursing through your veins. Feeling relaxed yet? Have you ever been late to a meeting where you had to sprint through the door, desperately trying to look composed while secretly hoping nobody noticed the coffee stain on your shirt? Well, allow me to introduce you to the cowboys of the 1,870 seconds, who are about to experience a stampede that could rival any caffeinated catastrophe. Picture them waving their hats around like it's an impromptu dance party, all while hoping that the herd doesn't trample them into the nearest prairie pancake. Now, close your eyes and envision a chaotic scene. It's just before dawn, darker than your most questionable decisions on a Saturday night. The chill bites at your skin, but you're too busy wondering how on earth you're going to make sense of this motley crew of cattle and cowboys. Congratulations! You've just been dropped into the heart of Texas in 1870, where it turns out cowboys didn't just rope cattle. They also had some fascinating and sometimes hilarious strategies for navigating sheer pandemonium. Let's talk about the noise. It's an unholy fusion of frantic shouts, grunts, and the cacophonous sound of a stampede that would make a rock concert sound like a lovely symphony. Add the unsettling, brassy mooing of agitated longhorns determined to go wherever they please, and you've got yourself a recipe for pure, unfiltered chaos. It's like trying to calm a toddler who's just seen a balloon animal at a birthday party. Good luck competing with the excitement and, oh yes, the inevitable mess. You breathe in deeply, trying to identify the aroma sweeping over you. Is it the sweet scent of adventure? Or maybe it's just a blend of dust, sweat, and you guessed it, more dust. Think about it. If you were to bottle this moment and sell it as a new fragrance, it would be called Eau de Cowboy, the scent of slight panic. In the midst of this mayhem, picture a group of cowboys who look slicker than a bar of soap on an oil slick. They ride recklessly, hats flopping in the wind, hollering epithets like modern-day motivational quotes gone wrong. We'll show him what for. Sounds grand, but in reality, it's the cowboy equivalent of, hold my beer, I can make this worse. Now, let's be real. If you've ever played a game of keep away in your childhood, you know the feelings of panic and desperation. Imagine that game stretched out across hundreds of acres, with 2,000 angry longhorns at the center of the chaos. Every cowboy is desperately trying to turn the herd into a spiral, but instead it resembles a spiral staircase leading straight into madness. Is it a strategy or just wishful thinking? Spoiler alert, it's definitely the latter. As the dust whips around you like a tornado made of cotton candy, you suddenly question whether the cowboys have confused cattle herding with interpretive dance. One moment they're aimed at the front of the herd, hats waving like flags in a barbecue, and the next, they're tossed aside as the stampede picks a new path towards the nearest watering hole. Surprise! The herd has a different agenda today, and if you're caught in the mix, consider yourself part of the entertainment. There's a certain irony to it all. You're watching the cowboys' attempts to control an uncontrollable force, like herding cats, but, with a much larger hoof to cattle ratio. And now you're realizing that cattle and cowboys might have more in common than you thought. Both seem equally uncertain about where they're headed, relying on instinct and a sprinkle of confusion to guide them. Amidst the chaos, a mental image of a cowboy clutching his hat for dear life brings a grin to your face. Imagine him bobbing around in that sea of chaos, like an inflatable pool toy caught in a riptide. You can almost hear him squeal, "I'm gonna need a bigger hat." As the night settles and the dust begins to clear, you reflect on the day's wild antics and the sheer absurdity of trying to force thousands of massive creatures into a coherent game plan. You chuckle softly, knowing that in the grand, tapestry of history. The truth might not always be glamorous, but it's undeniably rich with moments that leave a smile on your face. So, as you slip into a peaceful slumber, might you dream of chaos on the cattle trail, where each stampede is a glorious reminder that even the most unromanticized slices of history are ripe for laughter and absurdity, as long as you're willing to ride the wave or shorter, a bucking bronco. Sweet dreams. Chapter 21. The Cattle River Rumble. A wet and wild adventure. Hey guys. Welcome back to today's electrifying episode of Time's mildly interesting history, the unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail. Picture this. It's hot, it's sticky, and you find yourself standing in the middle of a chaotic cattle drive, though your current travel is more like an extreme sport than a leisurely jaunt. Imagine for a moment you're a cowboy who's just stepped into the muddy boots of the 1,870 seconds. Faced with a wide river so full of cattle and confusion that it might as well be an aquatic dance party. Can you feel the tension? It's thicker than a Texas steak, and trust me, you're about to be shoulder deep in it. Now, before we dive in, I have some questions for you. Have you ever attempted to juggle while riding a unicycle over a tightrope, only to realize halfway through that you're probably going to end up knee-deep in the mud? How about trying to convince a group of toddlers to share a single cookie? Or perhaps you've found yourself in a company meeting where everyone seems to ignore your brilliant idea as if it were a rogue cow at the cattle drive, just wandering away into the sunset. Forget all that, this will be even more chaotic. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1870, trying to navigate the life of a cowboy amidst stampeding cattle and unpredictable rivers. And, oh boy, do we have some stories to wade through. Let's talk about the setting. Picture a riverbank, long enough to make even your most patient great-uncle sigh in disbelief. Mud is squelching underfoot, your trusty steed looks at you as if to say, "Really? We have to do this again?" The air is heavy with the smells of sweat, dust, and that distinct, unmistakable aroma that can only be described as eau de cow, a fragrant journey through the ages. If you could bottle it and sell it, Cowboy, the scent of slight anxiety, would probably be a bestseller. At the river's edge, you observe an unruly mass of cattle clustered together, mooing like a disgruntled mob. Ever attempted to break up a group of angry cats? Now extrapolate that to 2,000 longhorns packed together, and you've got a scene that would make even the most seasoned crowd control officer break into a cold sweat. You watch as a lone hat floats downriver, a silent witness to the madness, possibly belonging to a cowboy who figured making a quick getaway was preferable to the chaos ahead. Suddenly, a shout pierces the air, and your fellow cowboys surge forward, waving their lassos like overzealous concert-goers, trying to catch a celebrity's attention. You quickly realize this isn't just a casual cattle drive, it's an impromptu aquatic rodeo. Get back, echoes across the riverbank, sounding like an odd mantra recited by the bewildered cowboys, desperately trying to maintain order. As the current sweeps by, it feels like the river itself is adding insult to injury. Imagine trying to drink coffee while riding a roller coaster. That's exactly how these cowboys feel, only replace the coffee with muddy river water and the roller coaster with the occasional stampede. With every powerful rush, the livestock thunder through the water, kicking up waves that splash back on the very cowboys trying to regain control. It's a bit like watching your friend attempt to bake cookies for a party, only to set off a flower explosion instead. And let's talk about the classic images of cowboys. Forget the polished surfaces of Hollywood. These cowboys are now faced with the gritty reality of life on the trail. Caked in mud, they're simultaneously embodying heroes and hapless characters in a comedy routine. Have you ever tried to impress someone while covered in barbecue sauce? Multiply that by a factor of 10, and that's the cowboy spirit in a nutshell. Hats might be flying left and right, each one a symbol of daring fate, or perhaps a reminder of just how close these cowboys have come to becoming soggy cardboard cutouts. Now, as the water churns, the dilemma of transportation arises. Do you let the cattle float, or try to guide them through the messy waters as if leading a toddler away from a candy store? Spoiler alert, toddlers are easier to manage. Each steer seems to have its own agenda, like a group of children sprinting toward playground equipment, completely disregarding adult authority. The combination of cattle, cowboys, and a raucous river creates an atmosphere thick enough to cut with a knife, or at least with a very sturdy machete. And in true cowboy fashion, just when you think things couldn't possibly get worse, something unexpected happens. Maybe it's the current dragging a hapless steer downstream, or their stubborn refusal to cooperate that would make a mule envious. Either way, everyone starts laughing, albeit nervously. That moment when the cattle get carried away makes for memories to retell later around campfires if they survive the ordeal, that is. Tales of a hat, once upon a time a proud symbol, now a defeated beanie drifting away, become legends, morphing into the great hat apocalypse of '70. As the sun sets and the chaos dwindles, you're left with the memories of a day spent not just corralling cows, but also navigating the wild currents of human folly. You chuckle as you wash off the mud, grateful for the absurdity that is history. In the grand sweep of time, you realize that while the cattle trails may not have been glamorous, they were filled with moments rich in humor, survival, and just a pinch of craziness. So, as you drift off to sleep, may your dreams carry echoes of the river rumble, the laughter of the cowboys, and a profound realization. Sometimes, the best stories, like a bunch of wandering longhorns, are those that come when you least expect them. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 22. The Cowpoke's Cold Night. A Blanket of Regret. Asterisk, asterisk. Hey guys. Welcome back to today's episode of Time's Mildly Interesting History. The unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail. Asterisk tonight. We're diving into something chillier than a snowman's awkward family reunion. Imagine a miserable cowboy, wrapped in nothing but a threadbare blanket, huddling closer to a dying campfire, bright-eyed and frozen-toed, as he contemplates the choices that led him to this moment. Now, before we gallop into the wild, perhaps with a touch less elegance than a caffeinated horse, I have to ask, have you ever experienced a camping trip gone horribly wrong? Maybe you found yourself under the stars snuggling with your own regrets and realizing that even your sleeping bag wasn't enough to ward off the chill. Or have you ever opened an IKEA box to assemble a simple chair and somehow ended up with a modern art sculpture that could double as a medieval torture device? If yes, strap. This is going to feel weirdly familiar. So, let's dim the lights, crank up the fan, and get cozy. Picture this. The year is 1870. You've just woken up, not in your warm, comfy bed, but in a frigid, dusty camp under a sky that looks like it could drop snow at any moment. Congratulations, you are now one of the brave souls navigating the wild and crazy world of cowboying. Spoiler alert, it's not as glamorous as the movies make it seem. You hunker down by the campfire, the flames casting feeble shadows that dance around your equally feeble hopes for the night. The fire sputters like a bad old-timey joke, leaving you to contemplate the misfortunes of the day like if it was worth battling the bitter wind to roast slightly questionable beans over an open flame. The warmth from the crackling fire provides you with the soothing comfort equivalent to a lukewarm bath, which is to say, it's nice, but hardly a lifesaver. The temperature is dropping faster than your chances of winning the Most Cozy Cowboy Award. You pull up your blanket, a glorious relic that has seen better days and might have even survived a few unfortunate encounters with the family dog, but it's less snug as a bug in a rug and more draped like a sad tortilla over an undercooked burrito. There's not a lot of insulation here, folks, but hey, at least there's a smattering of starlight above you, which is pretty much the only form of natural light you're likely to have until dawn arrives. Every gust of wind feels like an icy slap to the face, leaving you wondering if a chicken was involved in a game of Tetris with the weather because it's seriously messed up here. And just when you think it can't get worse, a certain rodent, who is absolutely not in the mood for your frozen self-pity, scuttles past. Oh yes, that's right, your blanket isn't the only thing keeping you company tonight. Rodents have also flagged this spot as prime real estate for any aspiring tiny acrobats. Suddenly, you hear the sound of hooves crunching on frost, and it's not just your own despair that's galloping into view. Your fellow cowboys arrive, looking just as miserable and roughly as put together as you. Imagine a ragtag team of icicles armed with lassos. They gather around the dwindling fire like a sad circle of trust, sharing half-hearted attempts at humor about their day. I just tugged on a steer's leg while trying to sleep. One jokes. Turns out we both thought it was a blanket. Cue nervous laughter. It does little to warm the chill in your bones. As the fire coughs one last smoky breath, the night's true character reveals itself. The campfire becomes your best friend and worst enemy. Ever tried telling a story around a campfire while desperately clutching your knees to your chest because the only thing shielding them from frostbite is your own self-loathing? You try to conjure joy from the absurdity of nature. What are cowboys good at, besides singing and hoping for a warm meal? Contemplating their life choices on a chilly night and wondering if any of it was worth the soggy beans. Spoiler, they'd trade 100 soggy beans for a warm strawberry shortcake at this point. Around you, the landscape stretches into an imposing expanse. The stars twinkle in the dark, beautiful and bright, yet indifferent to your plight. It's like hanging out with a bunch of friends who secretly enjoy your misfortune. You stretch your blanket, wondering if this is the moment humanity peaked, or if it's just the universe pulling pranks on the likes of you. Maybe this is just the universe's way of saying, sleep tight, cowboy. And good luck getting any real sleep tonight. As the stars wink conspiratorially overhead, you realize you're caught in a cosmic joke. Out there in the timeless dark, perhaps some traumatized cosmic cowboy is laughing at you, too. But amidst the cold and regret, there's a comforting thought when tomorrow rolls around. You'll have stories that would make even the saddest, most blemished burrito burst into laughter. Because in the end, surviving the cowboy cattle trail means embracing the cold and finding warmth in the ridiculousness of it all. So as you drift off to sleep, may your dreams be filled with the warmth of that fidgety fire, the soft murmurs of your fellow cowboys, and the comforting absurdity that sometimes the best tales of survival come from a downright chilly, threadbare night. Chapter 23, The Night Watch, Shadows, Secrets and Snacks That Should Stay Unspoken. Hey guys. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Time's Mildly Interesting. History, the unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail. Tonight, we're diving into something darker than a sleepover at your in-laws' house. Imagine a lonely cowboy on night watch, battling the elements while sharing his deepest thoughts with the shadows. Before we saddle up and ride into the pitch-black landscape of the 1,870 seconds cattle trail, let me ask you, ever sat up late at night feeling like a prisoner to your own thoughts? Or perhaps you've found yourself staring at the ceiling, wondering if the rumble in your stomach means it's time for a snack or a disgruntled ghost has decided to start paranormal aerobics right over your head. How does one ever make a snack choice in such moments? Is cold pizza ever really a choice, or merely the leftover battle cry of your fridge? Finally, let's go a little deeper for our cowboy friend. Ever fancied sleeping rough, only to realize you had a better shot at a cozy night curled up under a pile of laundry? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1870, with the starlit sky above you and a rapidly fading campfire below. As the brisk night air settles in, your fire puts on a heart-wrenching performance, flickering and sputtering like a dying battery trying to hold its charge. You sit alone on your steed of practical irony, a makeshift camp chair constructed from old saddles and wishful thinking. The shadows cast by the fire dance around you, mischievously morphing into shapes that remind you of your long-lost dreams of being a successful poet instead of a miserable cowboy. The silence is deafening, punctuated only by the occasional rustling of grass, as if the night itself crackles with secrets that make you question every life choice that brought you here. You've got nature's nocturnal symphony going on, crickets and owls harmonizing beautifully while your brain genius ises about the number of beans you can consume before they create a wind symphony of their own. Now, that's a concerto nobody needs at the crack of dawn. Your rifle rests across your knees, like a reluctant buddy who's shown up for the party but isn't too eager to engage with the crowd. It's a trusty companion on this watch, a true friend, willing to share the weight of your worries but still judging you silently. You're pretty sure that while it may save you from a herd of rustlers or outlaws, it captures every cringe-worthy moment of your solitude. Just when you think you might actually have a moment of reflective peace, a sound rattles your concentration. Hooves crunch loudly on the frost-sugar-coated ground. It's the cowboys from your crew, returning to the site. Picture them in the moonlight, stumbling about like a troop of lost marionettes, their faces revealing a beautiful ballet of half-spoken words as they desperately try to hide their shivers. Their presence is a warm gilding on this icy night, a reminder that you are not, in fact, the lone warrior battling existential dread against the unforgiving starry expanse. As they gather near you looking like they just crawled out of a tumbleweed convention, you all huddle around the dwindling fire, sharing stories like they were warm blankets you desperately need. You swear you can hear them telling the story of a very unfortunate encounter with a rogue mule that may or may not have left a sizable surprise on the trail earlier that day. The punchline? No one told me I needed a shovel and a sense of humor. Cue your laughter bursting forth, fueled by the absurdity of it all, though it's tinged with an underlying fear that tomorrow you might just wind up with that very same mule conversation on repeat. As the flickering light dances around your faces, it draws out an almost theatrical tension, the kind that whispers, "This is the time of absolute camaraderie, but don't let it fool you. The wilderness is merciless, and all of you are one incorrectly tossed bean burrito away from a complete disaster." The night wears on, and you deal with the overwhelming sense of dread cast as long shadows. These shadows are not just mere manipulations of light and angle. They are the embodiment of your deepest worries, the what-ifs that hang around every cowboy's head. Did I leave the gate open? What if the horses are plotting against me? Did I really just try to have a conversation with a cactus? And through it all, you can't shake that absurd sense of hope that tomorrow will reward your toil with, you guessed it, another day of soggy beans. Because herein lies the beautiful reality of cowboy life. It's a strange concoction of sleep deprivation, snicker-worthy encounters, and finding joy in the weirdest of circumstances. After all, surviving the cowboy cattle trail means laughing in the face of the mundane while appreciating the laughably absurd things that come your way. As your eyelids begin to flutter, surrendering to the seducing whisper of sleep, may your dreams be as wildly entertaining as your cold night vigil, filled with surreal renditions of tumbleweeds doing the cha-cha and sweet beans that somehow turn into soothing pillows. So, cozy up, friend. Your night is just beginning. Chapter 24. The Great Cattle Corral Conundrum. Life, laughs, and longhorn shenanigans. Hey guys. Welcome back to another riveting episode of Time's mildly interesting history. The unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail. Tonight, we're about to ride into a saga wilder than a drunken steer at a square dance. Get ready for the grand finale of the great cattle drives, where everything is dusty, chaotic, and as glamorous as a 2-week-old pair of socks stuffed under your bed. But listen, before we lasso ourselves into those sun-baked tales of wrangling longhorns, let me ask you this. Have you ever tried packing an entire season's worth of laundry into the back of your car and then realized it was all just socks? Or how about that moment when you thought you'd impress your friends with your cooking skills and instead ended up with something so charred it could serve as a doorstop? Now imagine trying to drive a herd of cattle for months under the blistering sun and telling yourself, yes, it's definitely going to be a smooth ride. Spoiler alert, it's always a bumpy trail, my friend. Dim the lights, turn on your favorite fan for that perfect sunshine-ridden breeze, and nestle into your most comfortable spot. It's time to put your worries aside and immerse yourself in a world of sweat, grit, and good old cowboy camaraderie. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1870, at the tail end of a cattle drive that was about as romantic as a tumbleweed rolling through a desert while being chased by a rabid raccoon. Picture this. Weary cowboys, rough as a cactus and just as prickly, keep their gazes locked on their herd of longhorns, now being herded into boxcars as haphazardly as a raccoon diving into a trash can. Hours of work reduced to a simple, anticlimactic moment. As you watch this great corralling spectacle unfold, you can almost hear the longhorns mooing in unison. Hey, where's the fanfare? We just walked thousands of miles. Give us something more than this bland box. But no one listens to them, because here on the cattle trail, the only fanfare comes from the fly buzzing around your sweaty hat, as it has claimed residency due to sheer boredom and hunger. The dusty ambience tastes like disappointment mixed with the last remnants of stale coffee and your bucket of beans, because yes, you packed that, too, only to discover that the beans have now become an artifact of your endless journey. And there you are, dusty, sunburnt, and contemplating if those beans really were the perfect companion for a life of leisure, whatever that may have looked like when you weren't dealing with a herd of angry longhorns and a steadily increasing case of saddle sores. As the last of the longhorns shuffle into the boxcars, the cowboys begin to gather, creating a dusty haze reminiscent of that awkward family reunion where nobody quite knows where to stand. They lean against their horses, looking like a band of disheveled movie stars who just stepped off a bad set, their faces a patchwork of sweat, dust, and sheer disbelief. You can only imagine the thoughts tumbling around in their heads. Thoughts like, did I really sign up for this? And is it too late to say I'm allergic to cow? And now that we're on the topic of these noble drovers, instead of the romanticized figures you might have seen in movies, these cowboys are carrying a mix of tiredness and denial. They share stories of their journey, tales filled with exaggerated bravado and a side of ridiculousness that makes you think they might actually believe they wrangled a bear instead of a really disgruntled bull. So, there I was, one of them proclaims, hands waving like a windmill in a tornado. A mighty steer charged at me and he stops, glancing at his friends, as though they might still believe he isn't making it all up. Let's just say I didn't stand my ground like a mighty oak, more like a bill, parsley plant in a storm. The chuckles among them are as hearty as the food they could once dream about after long, dusty days of working. Ever tried to savor a cold tin of beans after a dalliance with a rogue steer? That, my friend, is what they call gourmet dining in the cowboy world. Nothing like chewing through a can of stale memories to remind you of warmer times. Outside of the boxcars, an echoing moo breaks the camaraderie, and a wise old longhorn seems to shake its head, as if to say, well, this was anticlimactic. The drama of thousands of miles reduces to cattle shuffle, dust, and those same endless buckets of beans. Now that's a plot twist nobody asked for. After all this, as you find yourself sipping stale coffee beside these cowboys, you can't help but chuckle at how survival hinges on shared nonsense, a sprinkle of absurdity, and a hefty dose of laughter. When the dust settles, what remains is not just a bunch of tired men but a well-earned brotherhood, bound by the ludicrous definitions of life on the cattle trail. It's about survival, stories, and the occasional laugh that springs forth amidst the chaos. So, next time you groan about your laundry, just remember those cowboys saying a silent prayer to the universe. May tomorrow's trail be softer than my pillow tonight. As sleep starts to tug at your eyelids, let the laughter of those cowboys guide you into your dreams tonight. A world where tumbleweeds, tango, and longhorns plot their revenge plots against boxcars. Relax, my dear friend, the history of the cowboy life awaits. Asterisk asterisk. Chapter 25. Pennies from Heaven, or the Ledger of Regret, asterisk asterisk. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Time's mildly interesting history, the unromanticized truth of surviving the cowboy cattle trail asterisk. Tonight, we're blazing a trail into a world where money doesn't just talk, it whispers sadly, you barely earned me, and you're certainly about to lose me. So grab your favorite stuffed animal for emotional support, because we're heading into some financial award-winning contemplation that would make a debt collector weep. Now, let me ask you a quick financial check-in. When was the last time you poured through your wallet, only to find enough change for a sad cup of gas station coffee? Ever held on to a few crumpled bills and wondered if you'd rather risk it on overpriced groceries or roll the dice at a new junk food aisle? Isn't it just delightful when your big plans come down to one question? Buy that trendy gadget that'll probably just collect dust, or maybe invest in something like food? Ah, choices. But imagine being a cowboy in 1870, where every penny is as hard to come by as solid reasoning in a reality TV show. Picture this. A calloused hand, weathered by the sun and hard days on the trail, fiddles with a few crumpled dollars, so pitifully thin you could use them to slip under the door for extra breeze. There you stand, that tumbleweed of anxiety swirling around you, contemplating whether to invest in a shiny new saddle or send those few coins home, where they'd be greeted with utter disbelief. As you squint into the blistering sun, the heat hits you like an out-of-control barbecue grill, and suddenly, the glare reveals a scene fit for a comedy of errors. You weigh your options. Should you spoil yourself with that much-needed gear, because why settle for a saddle that doesn't squeak like an old floorboard? Or relinquish your spending ambitions in noble fashion, promising to send home enough spare change to buy a week's worth of who knows what. Perhaps beans, again? Let's discuss the full cowboy survival experience, shall we? You can almost hear the gentle serenade of hungry stomachs, longing for more than a modest bowl of beans. Ever tried to impress your buddies over a campfire only to pull out more beans, turning your fire-cooked feast into an impromptu mushel called Time's Ode to the Canned Legume asterisk? And let's not even mention the taste testing that goes on. Think of it as a culinary adventure leading down a tragically uneventful path. Amidst the communal dining, if you can call it that, your noble friends are slumped around the campfire. All that's left is a pile of laughter and a shared hope that tomorrow might yield more than a monotony of protein-packed cans. As the sun sinks beyond the horizon, you all share fabulous tales of cattle charging, riddled with more embellishment than a Victorian dress parade. Did you hear about old Durango? Someone calls out, wagging a finger in disbelief. He swore he wrestled a longhorn the size of a house. I mean, have you seen the size of his house? More like a tiny shed. Survival isn't just physical, it's mental, too. You become accustomed to enduring colorful narratives sprinkled with exaggerated heroics. And through it all, your mind returns to that dwindling dollar, your potential luxury hovering just like a mirage in the distance. Ever drifted off while pondering the average lifespan of a dollar bill? Well, it sure feels shorter than the time it takes to explain how rips in your jeans can become haute couture trends. Let's shift gears, shall we? Speaking of rips, let's talk about cowboy clothing, a costuming dinner party where the only invited guests are patches, dust, and sweat. The ideal look? Ragged denim, golden sunburns, and the ever-popular aroma of dried beans. An ensemble so chic it could debut at a fancy gala, but instead is living out its life at home under a cloud of cow muck and self-deprecation. Choosing between investing in gear or those contemplative homemade fiscal contributions makes you feel like a contestant on a game show where the prize is an endless cycle of second-guessing. You've become a financial acrobat, balancing the terrifying thought that if this dollar doesn't last, your aspirations could land with a thud, like a sack of flour dropped from the moon, turning your dreams into a pile of dust somewhere along the cattle trail. As you find comfort beside that flickering campfire light, a piece of unexpected wisdom pops into your mind. The only thing less reliable than your next paycheck is undoubtedly the campfire coffee, gritty and questionable. With these profound truths rattling in your head, surrounded by cowboys spinning tales of valiant adventures, the notion hits you. Maybe life is about more than what you squeeze into your budget. Sometimes, you just need to throw caution to the wind and invest in laughter. After all is said and done, whether you decide to buy that new saddle or send those coins home, remember, sometimes it's not the amount on the ledger, but the jokes you share and the memories you build during your cattle drives that will leave you with a richer life. Because nothing says "I survived" quite like a trail of laughter echoing off the backs of cattle, wishing they'd enrolled in some sort of cow yoga back home. And as sleep begins to pull you gently into the night, imagine your thoughts swirling along with the dust clouds of yesteryear, where dreams of shiny gear and priceless camaraderie dance alongside you. And now, as the dust settles, the fire burns low, and the echoes of hooves fade into the quiet edges of the night. Let your breath soften, and let the long, chaotic day on the cattle trail drift gently behind you. Tonight, we walk beside cowboys who push through exhaustion, loneliness, thirst, storms, and the kind of absurd mishaps only history could invent, from wrestling beans in a chuck wagon surrounded by prairie dogs to negotiating with cattle who behaved more like grumpy relatives than livestock. We watch teenagers barely old enough to shave confront endless miles of prairie, unpredictable tempers of longhorns, and the heavy silence of isolation. We laughed with the crew as they stumbled back to camp like lost marionettes, sharing warmth and stories beneath a frost-sweetened moon. And even in the hardest moments, the back-breaking rides, the sleepless nights, the questionable dinners, the stampedes that came out of nowhere, they found humor. They found grit. They found each other. They survived not because the trail was kind, but because their spirit was stubborn enough to keep going, one dusty step at a time. There's something deeply human in that, the ability to laugh through discomfort, to endure the unforgiving, and to find warmth in the smallest comforts. So as you lie in your soft bed, wrapped in quiet, modern ease, take a moment to feel grateful for clean clothes, for warm meals, for mornings without stampedes, and nights without beans that double as construction materials. Let your room grow still, let your thoughts settle like dust after a long ride, and let sleep take you gently, the way dusk settles over the prairie. You're safe, you've done enough for today, and the world with all its chaos and cattle trail madness can wait until morning. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift softly into dreams. Good night, cowboy.